Yeah, I don't think doing the countdown slower doesn't help.
How? Right. Well, welcome to the Barrel Vision podcast, where hopefully it'll be a bit better experience.
Well,
Because we spent an entire hour trying to be better.
we got we got an unstable overclock for Tyler's audio quality. Um, it was increased. Oh, I can't do this bit. It's pointless. Basically, we're recording through slightly different means, in so that Tyler's audio quality might be slightly worse. I mean, no, it is worse, but you can hear him more consistently. I should say, okay, I don't look at comments, right? But as far as I know, we haven't. Yes, I don't look at comments. It sounds weird,
No
doesn't
one's
it?
actually pointed it out.
Exactly,
That
that's what I
it
was gonna
is.
say. Um,
Yeah.
but it's still a thing. Um,
Yeah.
and
For now, here we are. And
here
what are we here to
we
do?
are,
What?
and we are the warriors. Oh, fucking Imagine
What
Dragons!
are you even? That's just a bunch of different
They're in my head.
things that were in my head.
They're in my
All
head.
right.
They're in my head. They're under my skin. 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 Today we are pitting two. It's like death battle. It's like death battle.
All right.
Except it's not.
Yeah.
It's not death battle, and it's also not comparing season 3 to season 1 and 2. Or it could be. See, this is the thing. We went into this not actually having really established how we're going to approach this, which is fine because that means we can talk about it. um, Obviously the title is Rivals versus Rockpox, but I don't want to be like, oh, which one would win in a fight, unless you do.
Yeah.
Um,
No. This is in a more gameplay sense.
well, my thoughts
Which
were on an aesthetic level, or like that's coolness level, and fun factor in terms of
yeah.
fighting against them.
Yeah. We're trying to judge on completely arbitrary metrics which one is like providing the most, I guess, entertainment. I think that's really the main metric you would put something in a video game under. like everything works towards then how entertaining they are. um and yeah, uh, I think we need to just start.
But if it was a death battle, can I just say that the rivals would win because they got shredders.
The rivals would win because they can fly and have missiles and the caretaker. So
I mean, I don't know,
yeah,
man. I don't know. What's the caretaker going to do to the Rockpox?
well, exactly. But what's the Rockpox going to do to a caretaker,
Fuck
right?
all.
Even if the Rockpox
What are they
somehow
going to?
managed to
What
win against every other thing, they ain't being a caretaker.
What is the Rockpox going to do to any of the robots?
Exactly.
I don't think they can get infected.
Which is why this isn't what this is going to be about. Um,
Yeah,
but
I'm glad
what this
I'm
is
glad
going to
we
be
established
about
why that's the case.
is, I think, let's just pull up an arbitrary metric for the first one. Let's talk about, and this might be, chickens before they hatch, right?
What?
In the numbers wise,
Oh,
we've got a lot more rivals.
I was going to bring this up first, actually. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
variety.
pretty simple establishing thing that, yeah, when it comes down to it, and even if they do add more Rockpox in like the next season or whatever, still out the gate, Rockpox is dwarfed by
Hmm.
the amount of like rival enemy types in season one. Like, yeah, and I think that's already like ticked to rivals.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
the rivals have got like they've got their swarmer type enemy. They've got their like sort of elite, like, I don't know, a unit. I don't know, the patrol ball, whatever
yeah,
that slot that occupies. They've got the boss, like the big boss, They've got like a special sort of
shit ton of
mini
stationary
boss. They
stuff.
got stationary. They got just about everything except I guess just something that is stuck to the ground and moves. Is that
Well, the
really
thing
a
is
category of enemies?
I would argue that the turrets are actually the grunts, flashes, and guards of the rivals. In the like the burst turrets are the grunts, the repulsors are the guards, and the sniper turrets are the slashers, or something like that. You could arbitrarily make that argument.
Yeah, you
Um,
could, but because to me they feel more like the repulsor would be a guard, sure, but like I don't know, the burst feels more like either a slasher or an acid spitter, and then the sniper feels more like a web spitter because it's quite frail and long distance. That's
well,
just
it
my
doesn't have a weak
feelings.
point, but yeah,
No,
no.
that's
My
true.
point is that even out the gate they had all these. Like, they had all this arsenal of stuff. Obviously, the caretaker fight itself also has a bunch of shit, like the tendrils they can spawn. But there was just so much immediately, and then they even after that they got the nemesis, right, like the mini boss oppressor, like, or bulk detonator closer enemy. And yeah, it is something that Rockpox as it stands now doesn't even come close, you know literally. And this isn't even like an example. There's obviously they've got a Praetorian type, a Grunt type, and technically, I guess you could put it under Swarmer, the parasites. I mean, numerous in numbers, weak in health. I mean,
Sorry, I
that's it.
just
That
I was just like counting the rival enemies on my fingers until I realised that I actually have the game open. Um,
yeah,
so if we want to look at the numbers, rival tech 1, 2. I forgot about the appendages. I guess they count, and so does prospector.
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 to 3.
Yeah,
Someone's got the
nine
upper
to
hand
three.
here.
And yeah, unless obviously next season they release 6 new types of Life-of-Age enemies, it's going to be pretty
Which
rough.
they
And I think
won't.
even if yeah, even if they do, it's still the case that out the gate, Life-of-Age kind of faltered, right? Where like, the robots, they were like immediately they had tons of variety, tons of different like gameplay parts to them. They were just different out the gate. Meanwhile, the Life-of-Age are limited in their not only in their like getting them right. You can only really encounter them in Life-of-Age warnings. Um, or the types of them. There are so few of them, and really they don't play any different either.
I was just spinning around the model of the Rockpox Crown. I was just spinning around. I got a little
yeah,
bit distracted. Um,
the Praetorians and the grunts basically are the same thing. They're like the Ebonite variants, or Ebonite, I guess, the
that's you can
Ebonite
say that.
variants.
People know what you're talking about. Even not. They're probably,
Yeah.
they're probably connected. And that's really cool. But it's just like,
Yeah,
what?
they are essentially the same thing, except the Praetorians are slightly bigger. That's really it. And I know that's kind of already the case, but except Praetorians, the spray is an important part of it, and the giant weak point on the arse is an important part of it. But I'd argue, the Life-of-Age one has lost its weak point in the back, um, and obviously, or it's gained all the other ones, but so has the grunts, and so essentially they are just the same. They they are like like the Praetorians take like maybe 1 or 2 extra shots kill than the grunts, and there isn't that big of a difference. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so really, yeah. And other than the parasites, which I think can be a big deal if you let them, but they're also not at all.
If you
Like
let them, well, that's the
they
thing, though, isn't it? I feel like that's part. That could be the whole point, is that they're so weak that you sort of maybe the game is trying to trick you into neglecting them. Possibly.
maybe yeah,
No,
but
I
it's
wouldn't call
also
that. No, sorry, I wouldn't call that the
compare
main point.
them.
But it's happened to me where it's like, it's just a parasite, and then it gets to you. It's like, oh, uh oh.
Yeah, because I think he can fill up like half fill up your bar. Like 2 of them can fully infect you, I think. But like compare it to shredders, which obviously we would in this scenario, and them being astronomically low health, right? Shredders, despite their immense low health, was still an issue, right?
Well, they also have health. I think the Rockpox larva are just one hit.
They are like greys. They're like maggot health.
A shredder can take more than one hit from like Tabata, you know.
It's a tankier type. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it is tankier, numerous. But I just don't think that combination of letters tank belongs in any sentence to do with the shredders. They're not tanky.
But as far as the swarmer enemy type, they are the tankiest of them, I would say. But yeah, I don't know. It does feel like the amount of life of phage enemies are less than the rivals, and the variations between them feel less as well. Like the Praetorians and the Grunts basically feel like the same enemy. Like there's no real difference in fighting them. And obviously the parasites are different, but they're also pretty insignificant because they don't even swarm that much, right? There's only normally like 3 to 4 of them.
Yeah, for being honest, I feel like I remember it was in the trailer where it was like they literally used to I might be, this isn't going to be a perfect quote, but I'm at least paraphrasing, I think, whereas like there would be waves of lava, basically was a term that was used, and it's like, I don't know about that, mate. I'm not getting that sense here.
It's kind of they're lacking in quantity and variation between them compared to the rival.
I would bring up the fact that when you do get a Rockpox swarm, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of Rockpox enemies here, but then you realise, oh, that's because there's only 2 types, really, and that means there's no things like shellbacks or Mactera which aren't going to be grouped up with the base Glyphids. You know, it's just going to be hordes of Grunts and Praetorians, so there's no.
Yeah, it's essentially
it looks a lot more dense,
you know, or something. Yeah,
but it's not really any different in terms of numbers to a normal swarm. It's just because it's more of the same.
And due to obviously them just being Praetorians and Grunts, you really can just shoot at the floor or like just shoot forward, and that's like it. Like right, like there is going to be no aerial attacks, no like cogs that will get thrown into your playstyle. The life of phage waves are just kind of easy because they're just Grunts and Praetorians.
Yeah, I do have a sign up.
Yeah, they just don't care, do they?
My dad really doesn't care.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's like you can't just be closed off all the time. It's just like I'm not. It's just coincidence.
Just
that's not there. That's not there a majority of the time. It's not.
Yeah. There for like an hour a day, an hour every other day.
Well, it's usually more when it's up. It's usually more than an hour, though.
Do you just forget to take it down?
No.
Or? Oh.
Basically, when the call trails off after recording, the sign's still up, and we've been on the call for a couple hours after recording sometimes.
That is true. Yeah.
So there is that. There's also before recording, but it usually goes. No, it goes up. That's behind the scenes. That's a behind the scenes segment for this week.
Behind the door.
I can't quite remember where we're at, but I don't necessarily need to move on because
we're kind of summing up
sort of one topic. But let me speak. So obviously we're not going to be speculating about what potential Rockpox variants could be added next season, or if that will even be the case. But what I would bring up is what would be like the essential ones. Not even necessarily to bring them up to par with the rivals, but what are the bare essential missing Rockpox enemies is what I want to bring up, discuss.
Fill in the holes that the rivals never had, kind of thing.
Oh, so to me, I want to start this. The biggest one, and I think probably the most obvious, even though, a boss. Right? Yeah.
Like, obviously, preferably, we're talking caretaker level end of a mission boss, but even just health bar event boss, just something that you could call a boss of the Lithophage. That would help in establishing them as a threat. That there is a pinnacle, and because currently the Praetorians are the pinnacle of Lithophage. They are the most threatening thing they have to offer.
But
And that is
they're
as
so
sad as it
not.
sounds.
They just don't. You see, technically you're right. They are the top, but they're not that tier of enemy. So they
Exactly.
don't feel like
That's
that
my
at all.
point.
Because and I'm sure they're not meant
is
to,
only
right?
that strong.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it is to come, assuming that we get a follow up. But it's like, you know, I maybe we're slightly biased too because at least I thought we were getting one. I was pretty convinced we were getting a Rockpox Dreadnought. And can I just point out that Season 3 would be like twice as cool if there was a Rockpox Dreadnought. And that's all it would have taken. If they just had, that's like, because that would be not perfect, but that's like a pretty good selection of enemies that would feel a lot better if they had the Dreadnought thrown in there. They don't even need a Mactera or anything or Shellback.
I don't really want to dwell on this, but like if it was just an objective that was like 4 to 5, or depending on the length, and it was there as an infected dreadnought on those missions, that would have been it. That would have been fine. That would have been exactly everything. It would have matched up to par as the rival's first appearance, but it just ain't. The Lithophage generally, and specifically, due to these numbers, they have had a very disappointing appearance, an entrance, an intro, if you will, right? Like as far as the main arc villain goes, they've had a pretty weak introduction. It's like they've just appeared and they've been getting hyped up by management saying that we're losing teams left, right, and center. But their first introduction with the main character, which is
and then
you
I
guys,
ask, what
whoever you
teams?
play,
What teams are losing to these things? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like in no universe are slightly, I would argue, easier Praetorians. I actually find the Rockpox Praetorians easier than normal Praetorians, like the acid ones, not including ice. I genuinely, they are easier to me.
They definitely are. Because it it really doesn't take a lot of precision. Like you can take out the blisters on the front, right, pretty easily with just shooting.
Yeah.
And then all you got to do is power attack the back because it's got like 3 blisters clumped together on the back.
Not to mention, if you have any form of piercing or AoE, that kind of thing, decimated.
Well,
absolutely
piercing
decimated.
isn't inherently better against them, against a single Praetorian, because it won't hit in like 1, I don't think. Something that just penetrates. Obviously, the breach cutter does, because that does damage like every nanosecond. Constant damage being dealt. But piercing, it will only hit one enemy once. It won't hit the same enemy once.
No. I didn't mean like piercing as in that thing. I meant breach cutter, flamethrower, that kind of thing, where it just is.
So the flamethrower does pop them, right? Because I saw it popping the blisters from blistering necrosis.
It deals damage to whatever's in the flame, and if that's like a row of Lithophage tumors, because they're just all clumped together, then it will pop as many as it's hitting. Especially, it has to do with enough damage, obviously, but that's not a lot. But yeah,
and I suppose this is what we're getting into, though, isn't it? The threat level that you feel, and I feel like there's a lot of reasons why the rivals felt so much more threatening. Them sort of just being pretty damn frustrating bullet sponge sons of bitches, especially the caretaker, and it's like, there is that, but just from, in my opinion, just from a design perspective and presentation perspective, in a lot of ways, they felt much more real, much more of a threat. Like the caretaker is not, it's not my favorite boss fight in the game, and I think there's good reason why. It's pretty obvious why it wouldn't be someone's favorite, right? But it's really fucking cool, right? It's just this monolith that's just hovering in the center of the room all throughout the mission.
Makes like
and you open
really
it up,
large cries
it
and
comes
stuff
alive.
Like
it's like it roars, even though it's like a robot. It's like an upside down pyramid, and it roars and it looks angry. But it's like just this
It's
monolith.
literally angular by design, right? Like there's the yeah, it's kind of the point. Like its design is violence.
And then the Nemesis is
Like
like this fucking floating Doctor Octopus brick that like
yeah,
mimics dwarves' voices, and then like it fucking grabs you.
shredders are like arrowheads, and it's so much about the rivals that just are inherently more difficult, right? Like they are individually a pain in the ass, and when they in the intervals where they come together, almost like unbeatable, right? Like, you get like a shredder swarm with some patrol bots, and you're in the turret room. That is a very difficult thing to
Yeah,
come out of,
yeah.
right? But you have a life swarm in the room full of the pylons. You're not really that fucked, to be honest. You're not that bad. You might get infected once or twice, and that might kill you, but it doesn't feel anywhere near as overwhelming as rivals.
Well, it's like you
Like
get a big, but this is where the variety comes into play, though, because the reason why like a horde of different rival enemies is so threatening, so well, it's literally much more dangerous in terms of gameplay, is because there is variation there. They're all doing different
yeah,
things and all have to be killed in different ways.
yeah.
The Rockpox enemies have are much smaller in the number of different types, and you kill them in the exact same way, and they all sort of do the
Which is
same thing.
literally the same way is literally hit them once in the right spot, right? Like parasites hit them once, they die. The bigger fellas, or grunts, that hit them in the right spot, they die immediately. Like everything they have are like one shot most of the time. Like they are like one shot enemies basically.
Yeah,
Like
and we're
in
we're
all
talk. By
regards.
the way, we're talking like Hazard 4 and 5. We pretty much played exclusively
Yeah,
against these guys.
uh, they are one shot in even the most difficult stage. They are their difficulty level is probably identical from Has 1 to Has 5, unless they spawn less
um,
tumors on them, or
that's
tumors do
actually
more
an
damage when you
interesting
hit them.
point because yeah, I don't know how to feel about that because that can't really be true. When you look at the way they work, I can see why that I wouldn't actually be surprised if that
Yeah,
was true.
it, I can only assume that the higher hazard, the more you have to pop before they die, right? But even still, that doesn't really make them that much harder. But it just I don't know. Yeah, it does. Yeah, and it's just a very unfortunate thing that they've done, and I'm not sure whether or not it was conscious, like it was on purpose, because obviously people they got a lot of backlash from their community because of how difficult the robots were, and they clearly learned from that in that they immediately going into season 3 they nerfed the patrol bots into the ground. They completely decimated the difficulty of the patrol bot, nerfed everything that made it strong, and just made it kind of pitiful, to be honest. Like it's
Well,
not
to
an
be
issue
fair to
anymore.
the patrol bot, it probably should have been more like that from the beginning. I don't think it was really meant to be exactly like they were arguably much more.
Well,
They were definitely more lethal than Praetorians, especially from the
yeah,
beginning, right? But I think it's a patrol bot. I feel like was its name was misleading because they were a lot stronger than what a patrol bot sounded like it would be. Um,
yeah.
and I think
The
maybe they're
issue is
probably
that
more like how they should have been now.
it was the story that they were pushing on, wasn't it? That in all fairness, this isn't even their offensive force. This is just their scout team.
Exactly, that's the
Um,
thing. It's a patrol bot. It doesn't. It's not an assault
which
drone. It's not.
it's just like narrative wise, and I don't like using these arguments for justifying some things, but like you got to look at what it is, right? The robots were scouting out with their scouting equipment, and they were infinitely more of a threat than the full-on attack of that Lithophage is putting us under right now. And we are being led to believe that it's about the same threat. It's about the same threat level, and it just doesn't feel like it. It like I know it doesn't. It's not really a justification, right? Because obviously that's just kind of like story nuance or whatever. But it just leads to a whiplash of what was it? It's cognitive dissonance, I think, or something like that. When it
Yeah, I mean, I know what that.
where
I've heard of that. I still don't know exactly what that means, but I feel like I understand it.
Yeah, it's like you're
concept.
playing the game and you're having an easy ass time killing all these life of phage, and then you come out and then you're like hit with like, oh, this is the worst thing we've had to deal with in ages, all of that, and it's like I don't really agree with that, and especially since if anything, it's kind of seemed like we won against the rivals, even though we lost way harder than we have against the life of phage right now, right? Like the rivals won a lot more often than the Life of Age has, I imagine. And it's just, I don't know, it feels weird saying, but yeah, that I think I've gotten a little lost track, still on point, but I don't really know where I'm going anymore. So I'm going to try and refocus with, because I think we've talked about some of the enemies individually. Obviously, once again, there's not much to say about the Life of Age enemies individually. Um,
Mm.
in that what you say about the grunt is the same with the Praetorian, and that's 2/3 of the whole fucking thing.
Yeah. So what I want to say, because I said that, oh, like the Rockpox boss is the thing that's missing the most, and I think I agree with myself there. But at the same time, I
I
don't think that covers
I don't know,
everything.
but
I feel like
I
for
think
me, I feel like you need a stationary enemy as well, especially when you look at the rivals with their three different
yeah,
turrets, the turret
I think
controller,
if you want to
the
tick those
caretaker being a stationary
boxes,
boss.
I think boss, yeah, but maybe just more an actual difficult life of age enemy, just something that is actually challenging to kill, and
Yeah.
is threatening.
So a better way to put it, maybe they need their patrol bot.
Yeah, and like because
Or
that's
their
the issue though.
nemesis.
Patrol bots, they weren't even the pinnacle, right? Right? They were like that's probably why people don't like them so much. Is there like a medium tier enemy like a Praetorian? But they were more than that. They were deadlier than that. They were quicker than that. They were far. They were everything more than that. But currently, yeah, the Life of Age only has medium tier enemies, and they're not that bad. But whatever. But yeah, if we get some like higher echelon, like I feel like Life of Age probably could have done with actually having its own defenses and its spikes, right?
Exactly.
Like
So this is I want to get into this, like comparing a contagion spike to the turret controller, right? Because when you
yeah,
think about it, almost the different phage outbreak seems like almost based on the rival presence warning in a lot of ways. It's just sort of upped in volume in basically every way, as in you get dedicated rockpot swarms instead of just ambushes. Um, oh dear, sorry. Um, and then like the main encounters are now primary objectives, and there's multiple of them, and there's like dedicated equipment that you take. But in a lot of ways, they're similar to rival presence warning, and like the turret controller in a lot of ways I almost wish it was a primary objective. That would have been pretty good, and it makes a lot of sense too. It's like this is you
yeah,
sort of
taking
shutting
down their
down.
operation in
Yeah,
the
exactly,
area.
exactly. But that to me is why lift phage outbreak is, you know maybe this is another problem with that warning as well, because to me you can sort of very directly see that it's just like an evolution of rival presence, and
Yeah,
having those two warnings back to back, that just, I mean, obviously this is getting more into the comparing the seasons, but that to me was like, But in some ways, it's a bit of a downgrade. An individual contagion spike is obviously not as big of an obstacle, really, as a turret controller, I think. I don't know if you agree. Um, but I don't know if that
yeah.
means they
No, I
just
mean,
needed stationary enemies. I mean, I like the idea of like tentacles that just whack you. Um, you
yeah.
know, like
Or like maybe like spikes are up to the ground and try and like pierce you like the tentacles do from the caretaker, like kind of like stab a
well,
vine
like
type thing.
in Skyrim, Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm, where it's like the ground, like
Yeah,
well, it's not water, it's just tentacles, and sometimes they come out of the sea and like hit you, like places where the
yeah.
tentacles come out. I want things like that from the rock pots, and they would, yeah, but it only really suits like those
Well, because
areas, and I don't know if they can.
wanted
I don't know
to
if they would
kind
add
of
that to Contagion Spike.
they obviously the goal of the Rockpox was to make it like because like obviously yeah it doesn't actually have its own defenses, it just infects enemies and makes it defend it like when you clear out like a part of the Rockpox it summons Praetorians, right? Like pulls Praetorians out the spike. Um, and I think that's obviously what they were going for. They wanted to use the enemies then in the game, and like, or they wanted the life of phage to be something that can't defend itself. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
we should
Like
also
it
point
takes
out it's
over
meant to be
things.
more of an objective. The turret controller is meant to be an encounter.
Yeah.
It's a forced, well, not forced. It's a guaranteed encounter on a weapon presence mission. But it's an encounter. I wouldn't call the contagion spikes themselves encounters when they're primary objectives.
No, it's not like it's like basically it's an egg hunt, right? That kind of thing. It's just
Yeah.
you know you're there to interact with it and sort it out, um, and that does lead it to be I don't know. Like obviously it's more mechanically engaging than the router. Well, even then, I mean,
Route.
obviously,
No.
yeah. No, the tools of foaming and hoovering, but like I don't know. I think they're actually scarily equal as far as because you have to fight your way to the router and then hack it, right?
Well,
Meanwhile, you
obviously
don't
the
really have to fight
router.
your way
It's
to.
weird. I do consider the spikes, the contagion spikes, to be probably overall easier, but you can't
Yeah,
cheese them either. You know, because like the turret controller is just you have a driller.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And I don't know if you've ever really experienced it. You may have. Don't drill in a contagion
No,
spike.
destroying that
Not
terrain
good.
gives you quite
Yeah,
that fills up your infection meter quite a bit.
yeah.
Don't do it.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it has. It's a weird place that it's in. In the also, there is more than one of them most of the time. Unlike the rival thing.
Turret controller
Um,
should only be one.
yeah, yeah. There's only ever one of those, but you get multiple contagion spikes, which maybe with more of them, it would equal out the difficulty through the mission. But
I
I don't
don't
know.
know. I don't think more contagion spikes is equating to more difficulty at any point. That's just
I
no.
guess
Maybe it's I guess potentially keeping you around for longer means
the
it gives you
overall
increased
damage
chances of
it's
dying.
doing, or like yeah. I don't know. I think it's weird how similar they are, yet how differently they're treated. Um, Obviously, it's because they wanted to one up the turret controller, right? That was clearly their like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if the warning like had something in it, and that you had to like do that in the warning, and then they took
But
it
that's the
further, and then
problem,
they
though, isn't
turned
it?
warning into a secondary primary.
That's the problem, though. They were just trying to one up something
Yeah,
instead of. Well, I guess yeah, they were trying to make something new, but it very much so feels like they were trying to one up something. It was like they were trying to one up the rival presence warning, but it just happened to have a different
yeah,
theme.
yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm just going to say this and move on. That I don't think anyone was asking for an improved that. Like, I mean, I think we were like, yeah, this is cool, right? But we didn't want more and better of it, right? We were like, okay, cool, yeah, better warnings. That's more interesting. But now they've taken it,
Mm.
I would argue, too far. I generally do not like that a warning has now become a primary. But I think that is also for a
So
different
would you?
time.
Not necessarily. We can touch on it briefly. Would you call it like an unnecessary innovation, basically?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that obviously breaking down barriers is good. It would expand your horizon in the game, but I think that was unnecessary. I think just warnings that did more was fine. Warnings that go this far is unnecessary. They could have just made a game mode,
Well, the
and
reason,
it would have been
yes,
better.
you're right there, and but the reason it's an objective, and not just a warning that isn't like this. The reason it is like this is because it's an objective. Like it's an objective. It's not particularly combat focused.
Yeah.
None of the objectives really are, except elimination and I guess industrial sabotage. It's not like the main objectives aren't combat usually, majority of the time. And then, but that means you sort of just have another one added on that also isn't combat oriented, but it just so happens to bring with it
Well,
a couple new enemies.
yeah. Well, it wouldn't. Like, that's the issue that I'm running up against here, is that like comparing this season to season one, it doesn't hold up at all.
Well, we know
Um,
that.
yeah, but comparing it to season two, and we're looking
It
at
kind of does.
a
It's see,
fair comparison. So then it really comes down to the question: are all the new Rockpox enemies equal to the Nemesis? Because I would
mm,
argue the Life of Age warning, it's like I guess it's better and more than the Arrival Presence warning, but I also wouldn't 100% agree with my decision. Like I think it's more. I wouldn't say it's better. I yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I don't really know what to say on that point.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know. I think it's a really irritating conclusion to come with that. Like, Life of Phage is arguably a downgrade, as far as addition gameplay wise to the rivals. There are less of them. They're less interesting to fight, um, and you can bump into them less. Right,
Mm.
which is all around. It makes them feel like less of a threat, and just lesser. They just feel lesser because there is less of them. They are lesser. Um,
Yeah, like obviously there's a bit more to it, but at the same time, the argument can also be very simple. You know,
yeah,
there's more points you can
yeah,
make, but when it comes down to it, you don't need to say much more than there is simply a lot less of these things than there were
yeah.
rivals, and that's the effect that it's had is so
The,
obvious. And that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is just sort of how combat goes with these guys. And to get into what I mean, to
yeah,
differentiate from
which
what I
is
was saying, is
something.
like the rivals basically completely broke the flow of combat that you're used to, right?
Yeah, which I think I just want to establish that I feel like we're about to make a U-turn here because this is not going to be all negative, right? And I feel like I want to get that out of the way. That's probably the worst thing we're going to say about them from now on. Like, um, because I feel like we're going on to some better parts here. In that, yeah, the rivals, despite them being harder, they were a bit fucky wucky, and
Well,
that's why
yeah,
people hated
it
it.
almost
Really,
feels
wasn't
like
it?
the entire impetus behind literally every single one of them was feeling completely different to fight from anything that was in the game.
Yeah,
Um, and just completely disrupting the flow of combat. Yet at the same time, it's not like you really get the rivals mixed in with normal swarms. Really, not really deliberately.
yeah,
It doesn't really happen deliberately, does it? Let's be honest. Um, except I suppose in like the hacking parts where they do bring in patrol bots and just normal enemies, normal bugs. Um, but yeah, in like every way they're designed to be just different, right? And the patrol bot is like an enemy that goes between. It's just extremely quick, and it's got like a. There's only really one place that you can do any reasonable damage to it. And like switches between going on the ground and in the air. And like the shredders are like. I mean, shredders aren't that different from shockers. No, they're not really actually. Let's be honest.
yeah,
And then like the appendage, I don't know, but I think repulsors are a big thing as well. Like that's a big, not repulse, like the repulsion fields that a lot of things use. You got the turrets, you got the caretaker, and the nemesis. They'll use these things that are just a shield like that moves and pushes you back, and you can't
yeah.
shoot through it. It's very disruptive. And then it's like, aside from when you let yourself get infected, the rock pox aren't disrupting you in any way, but in some ways it's nice. It's a little bit difficult to navigate,
Yeah.
you know. Um, balls.
No, yeah. I mean, the robots, they obviously, yeah, they really experimented with what they could make enemies. Like obviously, you know, with all the changes they did to them. And I feel like they did learn some things at least. In the shooting metal or like that kind of thing, that it just didn't feel rewarding. it did not feel satisfying. It
Yeah.
did not like it was. They're so difficult to kill most of the time, and they aren't that rewarding when it occurs, unless you can kind of hack a patrol bot. Then I feel like you're kind of like, okay,
Well,
cool,
I think
because
they
you feel
learn.
rewarded for it, literally,
I think they learned
right?
pretty much straight away, but they were sort of they dedicated to having season 2 be about the rivals though, because the
Yeah,
Nemesis does take some lessons in that it is on average there is more feedback there. The points that you're meant to shoot, there's multiple of them, like
yeah, yeah,
more
like
exposed circuitry that glows every time you hit it. That also gets like destroyed, and also armor that you can break off as well, which is something that the
I
others
still
don't
wouldn't
have.
say. I still wouldn't say it was perfect though, because they really couldn't do much
No, that's what I mean though.
more
I think they learned the
with the
lessons, but they were
robot
still locked
framework.
into they were still locked into it being
Yeah,
a robot.
yeah,
But the Nemesis does learn some lessons there, and it's probably the most satisfying to shoot sometimes.
yeah.
I feel
To
like
like
I think
dismantle.
like at the time people called it a bullet sponge, but when you look at it, it's like there's a lot of there's actually a lot of feedback you can get there. There's a lot of armor you can break. There's 4
Yeah.
different things that you can destroy, and like
I
armor that
feel
you can break
like
off.
yeah, I do agree. I feel like they could have done with being a bit like obviously I love the Nemesis and all, but I feel like maybe they should have taken it a step further, in that like you are taking chunks off of it, right? Like it is like degrading in front of your eyes, like
But
like
that
you are
would require a
tearing it
much
to
more
pieces.
elaborate model that you would like
I
expose the real
know,
inner circuitry and like you just yes, they can't
but
really do that.
they kind of had the. It was the only enemy they added. It's not unreasonable. And plus, they wouldn't have had to have added that much. It would have just been more, instead of taking away the armor plating on the outside, they take out like chunks of it. Uh, but still, it's still fine. And obviously, they did learn the lesson. But they maybe could have gone a bit further with it. But it's still, they couldn't really do much. They kind of buried themselves in. Because I think even going into season 2, they're already kind of aware of the issues. Because obviously, you can ignite the caretaker, or you could, but
Not
eventually
not
they
the
kind of got
not
rid
the
of that.
caretaker.
Um, not yet, not caretaker. The nemesis, right? Like you could ignite the nemesis, but eventually they kind of like started making it so you really couldn't. Like it wasn't viable to set the nemesis on fire, which kind of destroyed the whole fire meta on robots. Or not, it destroyed it, but it didn't carry over to the nemesis, their newest edition. Um,
Yeah, I mean
or after a couple
it didn't in
patches.
the same way. You could still do it. There was like it was actually incendiary grenades were the best way to do it actually.
Yeah, until they patched it, didn't they?
Yeah.
Which kind of my point. They got on.
Incendiary
They
grenades, hellfire, and burning hell. That's
Yeah,
how you gotta do
you
it. It's
could,
like,
and you still can, like probably, but like it's still a fact that the Nemesis is, other than the Caretaker, the most fire resistant thing out there, which you could sum up to its obviously its size, like the Caretaker. But I think it's more that they realized that the whole Fire Alliance is a negative of the of the robots, and your Fire Alliance. Um, so they kind of toned it down a bit, and so you now just shoot it, or use like explosions, its other weaknesses.
yeah, but do
Um,
you think there's anything inherently wrong with just having an enemy category that is dominated by a particular status, like a particular damage type?
I think there's an issue in there until, and obviously this is what happened. The robots are such a issue unless they're taken down, right? Like a patrol bot's left to thrive, right? Like if there's a couple of patrol bots on the field, they're gonna kill everyone. Right, they are an issue. You're gonna lose, right? Same with if you enter a turret controller room or you spawn in one, like in a point action, right? You are going to lose if you can't take that robots down quickly. And the only way of doing that was a flamethrower or flame type like tool, right? So it really kind of didn't make sense not to bring a fire weapon, because you will pay if you don't.
Yeah,
The robots will kill you before you kill them. Unlike if you have a flame weapon, you could take them down, which I would inherently say eventually would be the case with the Nemesis, um, which I feel like now is a good time to bring it back to the Rockpox, in that that is clearly not the case right now. The Rockpox enemies are like they're immune to all status effects basically. It doesn't matter. Set them
Well,
on fire.
it's interesting though.
Neurotoxin them.
So no, hold on, because what we're about to get into, I think, is sort of the feedback, right? Enemy
Yeah.
feedback, right? And it should be noted that technically, and technically is the operative word here, Rockpox enemies aren't actually immune to anything.
Yeah.
As in, you get, so obviously we're going to talk about other types of feedback, but there's just the fact that it always feels like you're doing something. I feel like not just having your status effects be visualized, even though if they're not doing a lot, it just makes fights more satisfying, which seems sort of trivial, but I think it's true. And that doesn't apply to the robots that much, to be fair. But like, there's something I don't like about a lot of the bosses. Like, I don't like that you can't set. I don't need fire to be strong against dreadnoughts, but I want to see a dreadnought on fire, And
Yeah.
it's the same with the Rockpox is sort of. I don't think it's them addressing that, but it alleviates that. It's like you could put any status effect on them. It's just not going to do much. It's just not.
Yeah, like it's like I'm not even sure on the Beastopedia. Do they have like any weaknesses? Really,
That's
does
actually
it
good. That's
state?
a good question. The
Because
Beastopedia.
obviously like everything you do, as long as it's on the tumors, will work, right? Like you still use the flamethrower, still use the slice bomb, anything. As long as it's on the tumors, they'll take
Yeah,
they'll instantly pop and all that stuff.
it actually doesn't mention anything except that the Praetorian is
Right.
resistant to fear and stun.
Yeah,
Uh,
which is not new. The robots also do that, which is something they liked keeping that around, which is maybe something of note.
yeah, but I do think
They
this is
liked,
slightly misleading, right? Because actually no, it's not. Sorry, because obviously the way damage types work and its relation to the bestiary is really complicated, and how the information in the game is not it's not actually that technically accurate. It tells
yeah,
you, in my opinion, it does tell you need to know. Like, for example, all the robots having fire as a weakness, despite the fact that they don't actually take more fire damage, is not
yeah,
misleading because fire is a weakness of theirs. In that
yeah.
setting them on
Plus,
fire
it
insta
then
kills them.
the text on the side, the tips do specify that important stuff, right? It's just that when it comes down to that kind of stuff, it's not visualized in the graphics form in the bottom left. It's on the tip side, being like pop these things, or they'll instantly like explode on
Yeah.
being ignited, stuff like that.
At the same time, sort of the resistances category, I think, is a bit more misleading because it
Does it
usually
not
refers
have
to
anything?
most of them don't. Like I said, the Praetorians got stun and fear, but that's it for all three of them. And in the case of resistances, it's usually things that just straight up can't be applied to those enemies, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, in a way, it's fair that they didn't really put many resistances down because you can apply pretty much every status effect to them.
Yeah, and they do just as much damage as normal, right? Technically. Do
Yes,
they?
but no, I think they do. But it's like they have so much health, and status effects aren't going to affect weak points. The blisters are sort of separate things,
Yeah.
not separate entities, but they're attached, but they don't. It's weird. But status effects alone aren't going to be affecting the blisters. Yeah.
This is irrelevant, but I want to try this now.
Okay.
What would blistering necrosis do to a rockpox enemy?
Nothing, because the blisters literally won't survive. You've done the. As in the blisters on the Rockpox enemies already, they're going to be gone if you just shoot them with the wave cutter.
That is true.
So there's basically no chance.
Yeah, it's because life of age things, they are very similar to blisters.
Yeah.
They for some reason they were like, what mechanic do we have in the game that we want to ramp up a bit? And they were like, blistering necrosis, the most confusing fucking mechanic in the game. Let's turn an enemy type into that, which is it's interesting. But
it's interesting actually, isn't it? Because it's like it's almost them taking something that they've added, or I mean, like, yeah, it's like how can we use this elsewhere?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is what I want them to do. Just a bit more reverse engineering than forward
Well,
engineering.
it's like I wouldn't call it mechanic, but like the look of the sludge sort of translates to the lithophoma. um,
Yeah. Well, so is like the goo that Sentinel was leave behind, that kind of stuff. But
slug.
yeah, I don't
Well,
actually remember
so
what
the
we were
thing with
saying.
blistering necrosis though is that it like a blister on a weak point, it does inherit that weak point's multiplier. I think on top of its own or something. So I
Yeah,
think
which
like
it definitely shouldn't
I
do,
think
right?
means like on a warden, it's like 5 times damage or something. If you get it on a warden's weak point. So I think if you could get a blister, or like if you could get a necrosis blister on a rockpox blister, I think it would you'd be doing like 1,000 damage with like like a GK2 shot. It's like,
Yeah, the only
it's
issue being that,
pointless.
yeah,
It's
literally the
pointless. It's
blister
never
will
going to
pop
happen.
instantly,
Exactly.
like a grazing of the wave cooker pops a blister.
Which is
But
why, honestly, that's I want to address this. Well, this could be a pretty big topic. Like, I want maybe we should stick to the feedback. I was going to get into like sort of the weapons that are and are not viable against all these different things and how they work. But I want to sort of finish up on the feedback thing because we brought up the blisters and then popping. But I also really
yeah.
need a piss.
All right, go because I need to feed my cat.
We're back. God,
We're back.
I had a really fucking crazy moment there, right? So obviously on OBS, you've got like the two sort of counters. You've got the live one and the recording one to show you how long you've been going for. I
Yeah.
couldn't distinguish between the two, so when I unpaused, I just saw the zeros on the live thing. Just,
Nice.
uh,
Great tap.
and my heart sank. My heart, like a split second. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that was like that's like my body taking a screenshot. You know, it's like everything happened at once.
Yeah.
Crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
we were about
Speaking of screenshots,
what?
wait, that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. What you doing?
Point is, here we've kind of stopped tallying, countering, or whatever. But here's definitely something for Rockpox. Popping the poppers, the little blisters, the little tuberances, the fellas, is the most satisfying thing in the game. There is nothing that beats it. I don't think. It's just tapping a single shot into an enemy and getting the pop is
I don't know, man.
unparalleled.
I find the
In
caretaker's
its
death pretty like orgasmic.
nah, because shooting the same with the cat, it just feels empty when actually hitting it. Like it just feels like you're just taking a health bar down. But when you shoot a ball on those life revenge enemies, you feel like you have just smitten God, and the world is your oyster. You could do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a tally. They realized their mistakes and they were like, yeah, no, we'll ramp that up. The
They
orgasmic
really
feeling
just
of dealing
went
damage.
for it though. They were just like, we need to elicit as much dopamine as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you did it. Well done.
Right now, I'm addicted.
But it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'd argue it is potentially one of the biggest reasons why people didn't like fighting the robots. That people just sort of didn't realize, and to me, it was always fairly obvious. It is just because there's not a lot of visual feedback. Like they don't
yeah,
even the basic thing of like I think there are effects, maybe like sparks that come off them when you shoot them, but it's just like there's a big difference between just shooting a piece of metal and having sparks fly off, like you would expect, and then between shooting an alien bug, it moves visibly every time you hit it, and blood comes out. Like,
yeah. Like
the
I mean,
rivals
I
were just
don't know if
missing
you,
that base level of feeling like you're really hurting something, which obviously sounds a little bit
yeah,
weird, but when it comes to shooter games, those are the things that you need to do
yeah,
well.
and I feel like it's something that Ghost Ship may have forgot. they just
It's annoying that they
they're
forgot it
good at
because it's
it,
something that's so
right?
good
But
about it's
yeah, like I feel like they just took it for granted though. Maybe like they were like, oh yeah, we make enemies. You make responsive feedback, that whole thing. But they just kind of like just glanced over that because they're so used to doing other things. I guess like like it's so natural to them that when it didn't come up, they didn't think about it. Like I don't know. It doesn't feel like it was a decision on their behalf to make killing things less rewarding.
It wasn't a decision with that intention behind it, but I think it was a
Yeah.
conscious decision in a way, because you still have. I think it makes sense as well when it comes to the weak points. The weak points are glowing areas already. They're just parts with a lot of exposed circuitry. Is basically the idea, and
Yeah.
they glow when you hit them, which is pretty. That's almost like if that wasn't in, that would be a really crazy oversight. It's just like, yeah, you make the weak points glow. That applies to a lot of
That's
enemies.
what they already do, right? Yeah.
For most things, yeah, or a lot of things.
But like, I think it. What I noticed it most is on the sentries, not like the burster turret, right? If you've ever sat there, shot a burster turret in the crit point, you feel nothing, right? Like emptiness. Like compare it to like a spitballer hitting him in the weak point. It's really that.
Now, hold
in
on,
and of
I'm having
itself.
sort of a weird moment thing here with spitballers because they flinch, don't they? Right?
I'm pretty sure
I
they
think
do.
they do.
Yeah,
I'm-
they feel it. They firm through it and spit at you, but they do feel it when you shoot them in the weak point.
Yeah. Either
Um,
way, I'm not too concerned about spitballers. But at the same time, yeah, I think the main thing
that's my
was
point.
no, because I said that it wasn't the intention, but it still was a conscious decision to give them this feedback because you had to make the conscious decision to make it so they don't stagger in any way. Because they wouldn't.
Yeah,
They're just pieces of metal. They're also, most of them are either flying or they're all flying or stationary, which means it makes a little bit less sense for them to stagger, I think.
jolt backwards or anything.
Yeah,
that
obviously
kind of thing.
Materas do, but it just makes a lot of sense. Like, it was more of a logical decision, but it's just like it's still that you could have filled in for that.
Yeah.
You could have had like
And it
bits
feels
fly
like
off of them, had them more deconstructible.
it feels like yeah, it might feel like they might have been aware of it because it feels like they tried to make up for it in like death animations, right? Like how patrol bots and well, not be shredders, but like whenever you kill them, they do some grand death animation, right? I think caretaker pretty big
And they all
example
just
of that,
explode
right?
as well. They just start
Yeah.
there. They all explode. Like
Yeah,
at the same time, we'll talk about the caretaker, right? But when it comes to things like just the turrets or the patrol bots, I mean, the patrol bots got its weird like whirring thing where it just rolls around and then just explodes. But it's like
Well,
to be honest,
but yeah.
just exploding isn't always satisfying as when you shotgun a glyphid in the face and it goes
I
flying
know,
off a
but
ledge.
I think this was their attempt of trying to balance it out because I think they realized that it's not that rewarding to shoot them, so then they have to try and make it rewarding to kill them, and I thought that death animations would do it. And in all fairness, you just played into it earlier, right? Like when I said that killing things are not that rewarding, you said the caretaker's death animation is, or like when I said that the popping is the most rewarding, you said that caretaker's
So that
death
doesn't
animation.
even
right?
that doesn't make fighting them feel rewarding. Fighting
I
them
know
should feel rewarding.
exactly.
And honestly, I
But
think
it-
ragdolls are usually more interesting
Yeah,
because they can
but
be
it,
pushed
like,
around in
tricks
different
you.
ways.
I 100% agree with you. I just think that their solution to the lack of feedback was to try and implement cooler death animations to make it feel more rewarding.
I
right?
agree.
That
Actually,
it's
it's also something that's missing
like,
from the dreadnoughts. If we're being honest, the death animations aren't
oh no,
particularly
yeah,
impressive. They don't
I
ragdoll
like
either. They don't.
I like what they do in that they kind of crawl up like and die like a spider. Like I find that amusing, but they definitely could do with a grander death. Like I've always said it, they should do some form of like. But they don't even release gas like Praetorians do, right? They don't do anything after
They
they
also
die.
don't do the death animation that often because of disintegration damage, which is like which is basically just anything, almost anything that isn't basic ballistics or explosives. Like any kind of plasma or fire will make enemies die in that weird disintegration animation, and they'll just go static, which actually is, in my opinion, worse than just letting them ragdoll. Or if they could combine the two, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, so the caretaker, that is, well, this is sort of the topic that this is going to lead into, which is just not. We talked about the difference between them. Maybe the Rockpox doesn't feel like as much of a threat as the rivals, but this is slightly different, where it's just presentation on a purely presentation level. not necessarily about whether it makes them feel like a threat or anything, because the caretaker's dying. Obviously, that's a threat that's been overcome, but that death animation is
Yeah.
still so fucking sick, right?
Yeah.
And
Obviously.
it's not just a death animation. It like you have the death animation. It just falls. It just falls over and explodes. But it's a combination of that, and then also sort of the data vault very slowly sort of opening up and sort of
Yeah.
rising
grand
out the ground.
staircase.
It's like it's just amazing. Really fucking fantastic. And yeah, the rivals of kind do have that in sort of spades. Like I mentioned the Nemesis earlier when we are talking about the threat aspect, but you know, it works on just a purely presentation level as well. It's just interesting and engaging that you can hear a dwarf in the caves sort of calling out to you, and the way the sort of the Nemesis moves around, that you can sort of just see it on the map, and it just feels like this constant presence. And it's just like there's almost a disconnect for me with the Rockpox between the parts that have good presentation and the actual Rockpox enemies themselves, right? Because we're not just talking about gameplay here; we're talking about the threats, like these individual things as a whole in the game, right? And to me, there's a massive disconnect between the meteorites and the Rockpox enemies.
Yeah.
Obviously, because
Yeah.
the meteorites don't really look like them. You know, the meteorites are supposed to become a contagion spike over time, but they don't look like one, and they also don't. There's no Rockpox, and you won't actually be seeing Rockpox enemies in a mission where you're going to get a meteorite strike, or just the normal meteor. Obviously, we've got the little ones now.
I feel like they could have added a little bit of Rockpox enemies to the meteorite event, but I feel it comes down to, once again, they learned a lesson from the rivals, and they were afraid to. They didn't want to make you. They didn't want you to fight Rockpox enemies unless you signed up for them, because that's people's main gripe with the rivals, is that there is no way of avoiding it other than not playing the game.
Yeah, but that was
which leads to the meteorites just feeling more disconnected.
Yeah, I know. I can kind of see why they would have done it, but it's their fault, right? And what I mean by that is, it was actually the problem with the robots at first was actually that they were all condensed so much, as in there was a lot, and it was all you would get it all at once though if you played an industrial sabotage mission, right?
Yeah.
It's just like there's just not as much here, which I think and it's also deliberately done in a way to be much more familiar, right? We didn't even talk about this. You've only got 3 enemies, and 2 of them are just glyphids, and one of them it's basically just the parasites already. They really, really didn't want to create too much of a difference between what we're used to. They wanted them to be more like something that we're used to, but just to have, they still wanted a unique theme, for the season, but they really tried to just bring them back down to what people like shooting, which is fair in a lot of ways, but it's also you played it so safe that you sort of missed the places where you could have been a little bit less safe at the same time. I believe that they should have you could just get Rockpox swarms in infected zones. Things like that.
And I think a meteorite, like the hearts in a meteorite summoning local Rockpox or something, that would also make sense. Like you could have Rockpox being the meteorite enemy, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that weird. You don't have to have a lot of it, right? Like you could have it trying to think of an example. It's like the hacking event for rivals, right? Well, after they nerfed it, you get like a couple shredders, and that's like it, right? Like they really didn't. You don't fight that many robots in it. I think maybe if they added that, like when you're doing the meteorite, it summons a couple parasites just to do that, and maybe obviously
because the parasites would be inside it, right? Or the plague hearts would eventually
the plague hearts
create parasites.
create parasites, but like maybe because they're hearts, that therefore question mark they're alive. So maybe they could like call out to any local rockpox to try and prevent them from dying. So um, and I don't know. I think you could make up a reason as to why rockpox would be in that event, but I feel like they just didn't want to. I feel like they actively, if you don't sign up for Rockpox, you do not do Rockpox,
Yeah, but
which is
they didn't need to
not
do both of
inherently
those
flawed.
things. They didn't need to make the new enemies so familiar and so much more simplified, and also restrict how often that you come across them. The rivals
Yeah,
earn that. The Rockpox earn being utilized more, in my opinion.
yeah.
They should be
Like
more present.
they would intertwine so much into a normal swarm if given the opportunity, right? Like, because I think that's the thing here, right? Is if a Rockpox Praetorian is in the middle of a normal swarm, he will be so much more of an issue, right? He will be a threat. He will be difficult to deal with, and he'll be a problem. He'll become priority target number one. But because the Praetorians are always next to other Praetorians and other grunts, it's all the same shit. They become a non-issue because you're in popping spots zone, right? Where you just pop spots, right? But if you're like
He's
in the
Doctor
middle of a
Pimple
normal
Popper.
wave, and yeah, and if you're in the middle of a normal wave and then you have to suddenly fight a couple life or phage, right? And then maybe there's like a parasite or two that gets into you. Like getting rockpoxed in a rockpox swarm isn't that bad
Get
because most
Rockpoxed.
of the rockpox enemies, all they really do is give you rockpox, so they don't actually really gain anything from you being stunned. They just kind of stand there and throw more rockpox on you, right? Unlike, and this did happen to me the other day, there was a mixture of swarms. I got rockpoxed, and the normal enemies tore me to pieces. Like I
I got
never stood a
Rockpoxed. Ask me
chance.
anything.
Yeah, uh, it just I don't know. It feels like, and once again, what we're saying isn't inherently true, but it feels like they got pussy whipped by the community, and they were afraid to
Mm.
change really things up in the type of enemies you fight. And they were afraid of making you fight them when you didn't inherently want to. So they were like, "No,
Well,
like,
I do have. Obviously, I have sort of a pretty major suspicion that they got really pussy whipped. Right?
yeah,
How I think there's a chance that season three is just a massive course correction in terms of theme. Um, but it is
thing
already
is,
in a lot of ways.
I yeah, but I don't think this is a course correction. I think this is a reboot,
Reaction.
right? Yeah, like this isn't them trying to turn the rivals into something
No.
more palatable, or they use the rivals to make a stepping stone to a good middle ground. This was them um pussying out and just adding what we already have in the game again. Literally, parasites, weak point popping. That's nothing new. They added nothing new as far as killing enemies. Kind of. I guess having to pop a bunch of them to kill them is something, but
Yeah, but
even
yeah,
then,
because like where the sort of the difference comes when it comes to differentiating the Roblox enemies from just general enemies, it's difficult to sort of describe. I guess you could say pre-season enemies,
yeah,
pre-season modern enemy that were just like in the game before seasons. I don't know if there's really like a concise term there. But
and
the main differentiation is that when it comes to like things with poppable weak points that were already in the game, it's a bulk detonator. It's like the goo bomber. It's not just the hordes, and that's the thing that they did. I think that's differentiates them. It's not a
yeah,
lot, but it's like you
but
have
it's still not a
hordes of
new
like dozens
mechanic.
upon dozens,
Just a
possibly
new
even no,
application.
it's not a new mechanic. It's just a slightly different application where it's just like there's just a lot of these things now that are weaker
Yeah.
with their pop weak points, and that just sort of generates that constant flow
Yeah.
of
And I
dopamine.
will take it back that they added nothing because they have added something which I've taken note of and I want them to do more in the normal ass grunts have ranged attacks. Love that. more of that, like a new enemy type that relies on that. Obviously this kind of does, but like how a
Yeah,
grunt
you
can like
already got
approach
it.
you, and then he'll trebuchet some rockpox at you, and then he'll like push in again, like that kind of thing. If only because it's established that they can make grunt type enemies that are slightly ranged but not that ranged. That is a new enemy type, kind of. Um,
Yeah, well, we have it. I mean, they do kind of represent that in a bit of a way, don't they? Because they are glyphids, so they do sort of represent the
yeah,
new glyphid varieties. Yeah, they kind of just do. There's no real denying that. Um, but if we,
yeah.
yeah, boogity 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 bug. Sorry, I was just thinking about the fact that we don't have like a raised eyebrow cosmetic, the unspoken
Yeah,
riz, or the rock. You know, it's like the rock
kind of
eyebrow.
wild. Also, that there isn't a clean shaven eyebrow, even though the Abyss clean shaves your eyebrows, so you don't actually have eyebrows with the Abyss helmet.
It's not
You
the only
can't ever
thing.
have no
It's
eyebrows.
not the only thing that does that.
I am aware, but I'm just making the point that there is no good reason why we don't have no eyebrows being an option. Um,
Agreed.
yeah,
Agreed.
and I don't think we've covered everything. I need to wrap up, but I will summarize in that, like, in talking, it really does feel like the the life of age enemies are just kind of a I don't want to say half-assed because it's clearly not half-assed, but half like the fearlessness, half the we want to see these in the game, and more. I guess we'll just make these. Like,
Okay, so
we'll just
basically, what you're getting at, or at least what I'm going to say, they didn't really take any risks here.
no. These enemy there was very little enemies, so very little opportunities to fuck up. There it's not a game mode, so it's not going to be a whole ass thing that no one will play. It does feel like they chose everything in the most like harmless way. Like they're the most pleasing to everyone. And if you aren't pleased, the easiest way of not interacting with that content. Um, and I don't know whether or not that's a good or a bad thing,
It's like the
because
only risk you could
obviously,
argue that they've taken. It's not even a risk. It's just that the only way you could argue that they haven't gone completely risk free is that um, they're not just different looking glyphids.
yeah,
Yeah, that would infect. I think you would like have to have like okay, they inflict the rockpox effect, right? But it's like
yeah,
it's more than that, you know. But it's no real risk taken here, and that's the point, though. Not the point, but
yeah.
I think it's definitely
This
intended
is the
after the
result of
robots.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's led to a I think well, it's a safer season, and it's worked, right? No, I've not heard anyone complaining about the Rockpox enemies,
well,
especially in comparison to the
I've heard people complain
visceral,
about
like,
the warning,
right.
and they
Not that
do.
surprised,
No, no.
but yeah, like, well, considering last time people were complaining about just about everything, the robots, like all everything. They technically, if you look at it, they were better received this new content, but at what cost? In the lack of I don't know, innovation, I guess. um Although, once again, I feel like the innovating that whole warning thing was a negative. I don't know,
Well, we could talk about
I feel
aesthetics.
like,
We haven't really talked about just the way that the different
I
factions
guess,
look. Oh dear, hold on. I've got lots of things to say. No, because we were just
oh
talking
god,
about. I had to pause a minute there. We were talking about aesthetics and
yeah,
how. I mean, you said before actually that you think the robots are fairly generic, but not obviously not to deep rock, right? It's like I think I do agree in a way. Sort of slightly generic, sort of sci-fi. So they look like the Prometheans from Halo. Um, straight up. which is pretty weird, right?
Yeah,
They look like that, right? The Prometheans are very different when it comes down to what they
they
actually
they
are. But then
they're
you get
just
like the Flood this
sleek.
season. It's like,
Yeah, you just get sleek robots, right? That's like sleek AI, that kind of thing. And you, if you were to give an AI that thing, like within a couple cycles, they'd come up with something very similar to the rivals in looks. Um, and I'm not saying that it's inherently a bad thing, but I don't know. Yeah, and obviously, they still do look good, and a lot of effort was put into designing them. But uh, yeah, I think they probably are both around equal in that as far as what they are goes, they're pretty unremarkable.
well, the
Like,
robots. They're
yeah,
pretty.
well,
I think
like
they've distinguished themselves pretty well though. They do pop to me in DRG.
in
They
DRG,
stand
sure,
out
yeah,
visually.
um, but I think because it's also something that like I mentioned this as like a reference to like China, but like Rainbow Six Siege Extraction, I think I played very
Oh
little,
yeah,
is one for one the same color scheme and kind of thing as the Life of Age version,
yeah.
like
That's because
black and
neon
yellow with
piss
like
green
mist. Yeah,
is like just the default for
yeah,
that.
exactly. Why would they? Deep Rock Ghost Ship felt like they normally don't just go default, right? For that kind of thing. Especially since purple would have been a pretty good color because purple inherently means like corruption,
It means
and that kind of thing.
corruption, but in a more
Because
fantastical sense. I think sort of like
yeah, we would have
infectious
we're in,
yellow green
we,
is very evocative of that. It
I
makes
guess
sense.
illness, yeah,
Yeah.
illness, that kind of stuff. But like we're in a sci-fi setting. I think purple could have worked if they played more alongside the maybe more mystical than bacterial in the Life of Age, which would have made them a bit more interesting. Not
Well, yeah.
inherently magical, just a bit more magical in its design. Um, like maybe it seems to be a bit more brainwashy than zombie parasite. Um, that would have made them a lot more different and unique compared to other parasites in um, gaming and fiction and that kind of stuff. But as it stands now, they're pretty generic. And obviously, the actual life of age spikes and that kind of terrain does feel pretty unique in its own regard. Um, and once again, I mean, the life of age enemies in amongst other ones, you can tell, that they're life of aged. But once again, they are just grunts and Praetorians. And I think I want to compare it to grunts and Praetorians, right? Like the design of Glyphids and that kind of stuff in the game are like pretty standout, right? Like obviously very clear inspirations in regards, right? Like they're clearly spider slash ants in their design, and stuff like that. Same with like Mactera being basically fucking flies, right? But they're still pretty unique and cool in their aesthetic. But I'd argue that the Life of Phage doesn't really do anything to change that kind of stuff. Like it's not that visually impressive, or in
Um,
its uniquity.
uniquity. That's not a word. Uniqueness, I think, is although I would deem that inferior to uniquity.
Yeah.
I wish it was uniquity. I think the world would be better. It's like that meme of like the world if like Justin Bieber wasn't born or something. It's like the world
The
if
world if it was pronounced uniquity.
well no, it's not pronounced because if it's that, it's like it's spelt uniqueness, but you pronounce it uniquity.
Yeah.
It would just be if it was uniquity instead of uniqueness. But yeah, I mean, the Rockpox definitely distinguishes itself visually from the Glyphids, but it's not
Yeah.
particularly visually impressive either, right?
Yeah. And the
And
parasites are pretty mid as
yeah, well,
well because
they didn't want to
they're the
go
only
too
ones with
far
a
though.
real.
I think they wanted them to look like Glyphids because they are. It's going to come
Well, yeah,
back to this.
the glyphids, sure, yeah, they're going to look like glyphids, right?
Oh right,
And even
the
they took it
larvae.
a bit
Okay.
further with the Praetorian, but yeah, the actual parasitic larvae. I mean, I guess the splitting of the mouth that's new, right? That's something. That's That's the only real difference from the normal parasites.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. It's I feel like they just could have done more, but
I mean,
like
I
like
get,
maybe
yeah, they always could have done more though.
like maybe there's like cave leech uh variants, right? Where it's, or maybe not cave leech variant, but cave leech referential um thing where it sits on ceilings and it will drop down on your head,
Well, cave
right?
leeches would
That kind of
definitely
thing.
get infected though. That's the thing. That's the.
Exactly.
I feel like some things are sort of missing, right? Like spitballers, cave leeches. Like, how would they not be infected? Like,
Yeah.
they can't
But
move.
yeah. And it just, I don't know, it feels like there were so many opportunities that they didn't take, which is obviously why we are of the opinion and are hoping for a part two for the Life of Phage, where they actually get fleshed out as a threat with increased variety and difficulty of the enemies you face in it.
Yeah,
But as it stands now, it feels they're lacking. They are. This is not a good start. But there's a lot of potential there, but it ain't here yet.
yeah. It's like
um,
it's weird, isn't it? Though, because season one really did introduce like a whole
Faction.
faction, really. Because if you look at like what's in, say, Macteras, there's actually only 6, and one of them's
Yeah.
a variant, the Frost Bomber. And in season one, you got 7 actually. If you
Yeah.
include the Prospector, you got 7, and then you also have the Nemesis, so there's 8 in total. Um, and they just didn't. The Rockpox just haven't gotten that treatment, but they also have
But
dedicated
then again, the
Rockpox waves.
Rockpox.
The thing is, you have the dedicated Rockpox waves, and you also have the Rockpox enemies that just show up when you're around spikes. But they don't really, in my opinion, break up the flow of combat for normal swarms even that much. And
No.
certainly, obviously, their own swarms aren't shit, which is why you really need something that will. There's no priority target in a Rockpox swarm. The priority target is
Yeah.
just the blisters. Um,
Yeah.
and
You
that's
just
why I think
spray
something like a
into the
shellback
blistery
would be
horde.
really fucking cool because it's like you wouldn't be able to hit. It would be like rolling around, so the blisters would
Yeah.
be moving a lot. They'd be harder to hit, and like it could
Yeah.
even like have like a trail of like an infectious trail that leaves behind. So you really
Yeah.
it
Like I
could
feel
it could like
like
encircle you. You really need to take that thing down.
them affecting the area could have been a unique part of them, right? That wherever you have to take them out quickly, because if you don't, they'll cover the area in life phage, right? That kind of thing. Instead, currently how it is, taking them out is actually going to cover the area in life phage for a while, and so it's actually kind of riskier killing them if they're actually in amongst not a normal swarm. Like it just feels like, I don't know, like, obviously we're not game designers by any stretch of the word, but it does feel like there was ideas that could have really made these just better, more unique, more interesting, that wasn't taken in fear of retribution. Because I can't think of any other reason, because they've shown many times that they are mightily like competent in adding cool enemies and unique designs and all that other stuff, right? So I refuse to believe that they're they've lost that ability. Um, Despite obviously the bit of a miss that robots are apparently, I feel like that was just more of an experimentation that failed, and it feels like now they have cowered into safety rather than I don't know, actually making cool, unique, interesting enemy types.
So earlier you said that this we're going to stop being negative.
Yeah, I
I
did.
don't
I
know.
regret
No, it's
saying that.
good. No, because it's fine. It's fine because
Well,
it's like
because
this
that's the
is
thing is though,
if this brings
is
out how you actually feel, that's a good thing.
yeah,
Right?
because I genuinely, while playing the game, and obviously this could be, if you think about it, it's the only thing that's important. While playing the game, they're fine, they're fun, they're satisfying as fuck, right? Like, as mentioned before, popping those little pimples on them, God's pleasure, right?
Yeah, and I do think there's value in sort of the arguable return to form that they are. For me, the main problem
Yeah.
is just the lack of variety.
Yeah,
But maybe maybe they didn't have the time, or maybe
they had the
this.
time.
I,
They had the
yes.
time.
Um,
Bear in mind, they had about as much time as making those 7 different robots.
but they just couldn't pick like the right ones that made sense for there to be. It's just they just covered. They didn't really cover any ground. It was just like the most
Default.
inherent enemies that you
Yeah,
would make
the things that
variants
have like
of.
the most variations.
Exactly.
Grunts and Bedorians.
So why didn't we get a goo bomber? Why didn't we get? Because there's an ice goo bomber.
I mean, a Goo Bomber would make sense, probably more than any other Mactera type.
It'd be a bit unfair though because he's already got destructible weak points.
I know, but so does a Bedorian. Doesn't mean they have to
Not
be
destructible.
that. I guess destructible, yeah.
Yeah, a pop, not something you can pop. That's the difference. But an affected bulk detonator. What's going to happen to him?
Yeah.
Nothing. It's also
Well,
that wouldn't happen because if it dies, it will
Yeah.
just explode.
I really like them. I really hope they don't infect exploders. Like, I'm sorry, if they intend to do a part 2, please, Ghost Ship, do not infect exploders or the bulk detonators. No matter how tempted you might be, and you'd be like, oh, they explode and they release a cloud of like things. Don't do it, right?
Why
For the
not?
sake, just it. Do not let a parasite infect a suicidal enemy. Don't let that logic trick you.
Damn it! Okay, but what if the bulk detonator? It was like it was smart enough, right? First of all, the bulk detonator isn't a suicider. It's not a suicide bomber.
Second of all, bulk detonator is basically already a fucking
Yeah.
it's the same. It's
Okay.
the
I don't know.
same
I don't have a
mechanically.
point here actually. I'm not for infected exploders though. Certainly.
Yeah. It's just I don't know. It's just something that if I saw, I'd be like, damn. I'd be like, damn.
You know what? I
They
genuinely
don't
want
care enough to
a
think.
passive creature. I think being infected quite a bit, like a loot.
That would be really cool. Yeah.
Because my first thought was like, oh, okay, what about Cave Angel? But like, oh, hold on, that's just one biome.
One biome.
Yeah.
Cave Cruiser.
That's also one
But
biome
like
though. That's
Is
just
it?
dense biozone. Remember?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. No. They are only in the dense biozone. Cave cruisers.
No.
They are.
No,
I was talking about the
no,
other day
Cave
how
Cruisers.
the dense biozone.
No, yeah, I agree. No, yeah. I'm thinking about the other one. The
Silicate
filter feeder
harvester.
fucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, silicate
Yeah.
harvesters. Can they spawn anywhere?
Yeah.
Good. Those. I want those, but their silicate harvesting is actually fucking rockpox infesting. I want everywhere they go to infect with rockpox.
Yeah, these guys could
and
actually be still kind of passive.
they won't attack you, but they'll like spawn the kind of things that will spawn parasites. So the longer these things stay alive, the more parasites will spawn in the area. Point is they a really cool feature that I've just came up with on this is if the enemies actually, infected the environment, therefore making it more deadly, right? The more enemies are alive and the more they're allowed to exist, right? So there is a genuine sense of urgency that, oh shit, life or fade enemy, need to kill them before they make this area uninhabitable, basically, and that kind of stuff. Which would then make a bit more sense that they wouldn't really occur in other missions because they might turn normal missions into a life or phase warning, basically, in that they'll be covered in life or phase and parasites everywhere.
Yeah, but they're not like that though, which means that they could have them in other missions.
Yeah, they should. As it stands right now, life or phage enemies are such a minute threat that they could be in anything they want to. Right, it wouldn't change anything. It would just be more fun, and then at least we'd experience more. Maybe it's the fact that they don't want you to fight Rockpox enemies that much because it will expose how little content they have behind them.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I don't like how constantly negative we are, because I went into this thinking we would really up the Life phage. Like, yeah, go Life phage, but it really comes down to the fact that Lithophage's potential is immense. Actual current output is disappointing.
Yeah, but I hope, like, I can only hope that sort of there is actually reasoning behind that, like deliberate reasoning, in sort of the sense that they stripped things back, made these enemies a lot more familiar, but it could also just be the lack of variety could also be just to also gauge at the same time. I mean, you could very easily have just assumed that people respond to these enemies well, but it's just like, okay, maybe we don't want to. I'm not saying they'd already
Don't
made a lot of
throw all
others.
the things
I'm not
in.
saying they'd already
Yeah.
made them, but I'm also saying they might not have wanted to add like every infected enemy type just straight
Yeah.
away.
And plus, they could always have they could have. Thing is though, is that they could have ran the narrative that this is their first launch. Like this is the the Rockpox is like first arrival. They're not that influenced yet. They're not that big of an issue, but they might be, and we need to kind of get in there early. But that isn't the story they're telling. They're like, oh, the Rockpox is here, and we never stood a chance to begin with. Like the story is implying that this is the full potential of the Rockpox, and that we are losing. We don't stand a fucking chance. And it just isn't that. And I don't know because like it's ironically the additions of the voiced assignments, which I love, is kind of the thing that's rubbing me the wrong way, because that
There's
is giving you a
compensation, right?
narrative that well, it's giving you a narrative that just isn't the case. It's also it's kind of telling you what they think you should be experiencing as well, if you think about it, right? Like, oh, like if the management is telling you that wow, these Rockbox enemies, they sure are difficult, aren't they? You're kind of sitting there like, no, are they meant to be? Ghost Ship, do you think these are difficult enemies? Like, 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 do
No,
you
they
think
don't
that?
because they were obviously designed to be easier than the robots. So
Well, exactly, but they're not pretending to be that in game. In the game, management's like, oh, these are like the next biggest thing since robots. This is really
well, that's
difficult.
not
We're
really
struggling here.
that is correct. The
Yeah,
biggest thing since robots. It's a bit-
yeah, well, yeah. Um, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's rubbing me the wrong way. And I look forward to because the thing is if they're gonna do a part two, did they say they were gonna do a robots part two on the when they announced that we're getting secondaries that roadmap? Um,
I don't. I'm gonna say no. I don't think so. I could probably check. I don't.
right, because they will know the theme by the time the roadmap comes out. They will know what they're doing, right? And I think they should tell us out the gate whether or not it's going to be a part two, right? Because it's worth knowing. I think it's not something that should be kept in the dark. Um, because they don't have to say anything other than that, right? They could just say, Life Part Two, and then they'll go on to say like, oh yeah, and new perks and that kind of stuff. Like that would be fine. That's it. Just I don't know, because I don't want to hope that there'll be a continuation of Life and then they turns out they won't. They're moving on, and I don't want there to hope that maybe they're just going to abandon the Life and work on something more interesting when they're just going to add like a couple more enemy types to the Life or something like that. Like I want to kind of know at least that much, and I don't think that's asking for too much since it's not saying much, right? Like
Yeah, there's no Sorry, there's no indication when they originally announced what was in season two that it was like the roadmap. There was no indication that it was going to be about the rivals again.
yeah. And in all fairness, I think it might be because they barely even knew at that point. Like, I am assuming at this point that when they did the rivals, they had no fucking clue. They did not think it through. Like, I'm sorry, but they were like, let's do season passes, let's do robots. And then when they did it, they were like, uh-oh, what do we do now? And I think the fact that they had no idea how they were going to deal with the rival content after it kind of implies that. But I am now assuming once because they've now gone through that, they've gone through a cycle of a thing that they should be going into this knowing how they're going to resolve this season. Not in like a narrative sense, just like what are they going to do with this content? how are we going to transition into new content, stuff like that. Like they should already like, are we going to do a part two?
And
That is stuff they
there's
should be going into this knowing.
There's quite a few reasons why I am actually hoping for part two as well, because like they have a chance here to step up and make the part two the more narratively like thorough season.
Yeah.
Like if you look at what happens between season 1 and 2, it's not the rivals do more. That's the story of season 2.
Season 2 is that the rivals are now pissed at you and they made a robot to kill you. That was it. That's basically the only thing that changed.
You have to have some kind of change, especially when you have this meteorite with this is it a meteorite you would call it?
Yeah.
The thing that's floating around Hoxie's. Not floating.
Yeah, it's a meteorite.
You have to do something with that. Because you have that visual representation in games. Like the state of that can't be exactly the same if there's supposed to be a difference in the situation going from one season to the next.
Yeah.
There needs to be, and it being like it crashing into Hoxie's, you know? That's kind of where you have to go with it.
I think I don't know, it could be the meteorite is still continuing to drop it on the surface, so you still have the event. But then, it will just say that, the things that the dwarves didn't catch is just spreading more and more, and it's infecting more and more enemy types. I think it just being more of a presence on Hoxie's is a warranted thing, which is why it's kind of awkward that it's already a fucking huge influence on Hoxie's, since it's like, I think half, if not just under half, of the playable missions are in that infected area. So I don't know. I think it's the issue of they don't seem to know what they're going to do next. At least they don't seem to imply that they think that far.
Yeah.
So they can't actually prepare for it. Like if this season, if they knew and they clearly established that this season was going to be a build-up, right? This was going to be an introduction, a light, quick, here's a warning, here's some enemy types, here's some fucking grenades, and it will infect like 1 or 2 parts of the map, right? But then like next season, which is not going to take as much time or some shit like that, right? Because there'll be less content this season. It will be bigger and grander. They'll take up like 4 parts of the map, harder to avoid, but there's more intrigue in fighting them, right? Especially, and this is after if they've gauged with this update that people like the Life of Phage enemies, which generally we do, right? It's just there's nothing else. like the Life of Phage enemies are just shoot a small yellowy thing once, and then you'll be all right. Like that is the Life of Phage threat. Shoot the moving yellow thing once and it will pop. That is the entire gameplay.
Well, no, it's not, because you have the objective as well.
Yeah,
they wanted to create a task out of it.
Which I think is really where they put all their effort. I think that's definitely something that should be said. I think that foam and suction mechanic, that was where our second grenade per cast went.
Well, we know that. Oh, we knew that already. They said that. Not they didn't use the words, like the verbs. They didn't use the labels.
Yeah. But
that was what they said. It was like in response to why isn't there more than 1 grenade per class? It's like, oh well, that effort is being put in other places, and yeah, I guess it was what it was.
It clearly wasn't put into enemies. Let's get out of the way, right? Clearly, then there's nothing else. there's nothing else. If it ain't enemies, it's the warning. Because I wouldn't say the meteorite was anything that needed more attention than ever, right? The meteorite is just a normal event, the meteorite is good, right? Meteorite is established mechanics, but done a bit more interestingly with the impact, right?
And also, someone made a good point about that. It's like the only thing that it's the only non-DRG thing that sort of comes from the outside. I don't know, comes down like how the drop pod comes down, like how Doretta comes down from into the
Yeah.
cave. Obviously, the contagion spikes were meteorites that had already done that, but this is the only time that something that is hostile. Well, it's not really even hostile. That's the thing, though. Not really hostile. The meteorite itself is not hostile. It
Well, the
just
thing is,
makes enemies come towards
they
you. The rock
in
crackers
all
draw in enemies.
fairness,
That's the thing.
yeah,
Not,
uh, yeah, but in all fairness, there is a light implication that the meteorite is doing it on purpose, um, and putting them there on purpose.
yeah,
There is
because
an
it wants
implication of
to
that.
infect those creatures.
Yeah, so it is implying that the meteorite and the outside is in some way, shape, or form sentient. Um, Probably not the meteorite itself, but let's be honest, there's probably a lithophage mother in the meteorite that is
Yes,
sending out the hearts to
yes. Which
Hoxes.
would be, by the way,
In
which would
that,
be a really cool, like raid boss style mission. But I
yeah,
don't think people respond well to
maybe
that anymore after industrial sabotage.
no, I don't want like a yeah, no more raid type enemies. Just infect a dreadnought. Just do that. Just because that is on theme, right? Because the Rockpox at this point, they're not going to be anything more than mimics that add a bit more to the original like Glyphids, right? Um, they're going to be just simple things, which is why they should just take a dreadnought and turn it
So, but
lithophagey.
what exactly
Um,
would be, in terms of attacks? How could the dreadnought be different?
well,
And also,
I
it
feel
would
like
surely if you make it like it would be. No, I don't know. When I think about it, it would just end up being really weak, right?
I feel like you could do really interesting things because by the looks of it, the lithophage it did something to Praetorians, right? Um, like they grew bottom jaws, right? Um,
Well,
like they're
um, huh?
the Praetorians gained a bottom jaw, didn't they? In being affected by the lithophage.
Hold on.
Isn't that why you thought they were
No,
dreadnoughts?
nothing changed. No, because it was just that illustration. The in-game models are the same, apart from the stuff that's been added. Their jaws are the same.
Right.
It was just that illustration exaggerated the jaw so much. I genuinely thought it was a dreadnought, and I don't blame myself for that. By the way, seriously, that jaw was bigger in that picture than it is in game.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Point is that maybe I don't know. Obviously, I should back it up with an idea, but that's not my job. That's theirs. But um, some form of I don't know, fucking maybe it could like I don't know. Maybe it infects it in the cocoon first of all. It gets in there while it's in its incubation period. So while it's technically a dreadnought, it's not any. It's not like any of the three we have, right? If anything, it could be a culmination of the three.
Do you think the Glyphid Queen's corpse is still out there?
Maybe. Uh, I don't know. But yeah, maybe. I think I'm gonna run a narrative, and I'm gonna just sit
Journalism.
that this is gonna be the next season. Okay, next season, the Lithophage has comfortably infected most of Hoxie's, and they are a very they are comfortable on Hoxie's. So the Rockpox mother that is in the meteorite starts sending pieces of herself down, and those will be the game mode. She will have giant lithophage spikes, and she will directly infect a dreadnought cocoon. Um, and while they're, that will be the game mode. You fight the lithophage dreadnought and destroy the mother Rockpox spike. Um, there will also add additions of many other lithophage variants of things, like either goo bombers or just a form of Mactera, a Corona preferably, maybe a cave leech spitball or something like that, something a bit more stationary, and that kind of thing. And that would do. That would be a more than fine update because I think
I think
we
making it
don't
some.
need an
Hold on,
event
I've got an idea. I got an idea. Make it so
and
that
perks,
it
but
does things. Like it gets the dreadnought cocoon and it it does things to that dreadnought that
Yeah, no,
as
it's
in
not
it
like
gets
the other
no.
dreadnoughts.
What I'm getting at, it gets big. It gets big
Yeah,
and like
but
to the
it's
point
still
where
mobile.
no, because I think part of it should actually include using the tools, the litho foam and the lithovac, damage it in certain like different stages.
Yeah, to make it vulnerable,
It
you have to
alternate
foam
between
an area.
stages where you have to like make it vulnerable with those. You have to take off like the blisters or whatever, and then it becomes vulnerable. Like that's how you take the shield down, like as if it was a normal dreadnought shield. You take it down with those tools, and or you had a new one called the litho fuck.
The
Sorry.
litho fucker.
The rocket rifle. You had,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, my idea
The,
got pretty out. I mean, an enemy that you can walk on, like a boss fight that is like built into the terrain, would be pretty fucking
I
cool.
thought that's where you were going with that, but
But
I
that
would
would be a bit
argue
different
that
from the
that's
dreadnought.
even more raid boss. That's like the Giga raid boss form is bosses
But
that you can
if
stand
the
on and
boss
fight.
is the environment, though, I think that is different enough, though, and there'll be a lot of variation that comes with that. Like part of like
Uh,
taking its health down would include fighting hordes.
I get the you didn't play it, but Elden Ring. There, you probably might have seen them actually. Though they're pretty popular. There are like tower building creatures that are literally they're like a building with like a rock legs, right? And they have some weird ass like I don't know like soul like algae or like the scallops at the bottom. If you break, the thing falls and it lands. And then point is that this is a very large enemy that is wandering around an area. And if you clear out its legs of its infestation or whatever it is, it will collapse and then you can go into it. And I think you get where I'm going with that. Maybe this thing, be it a dreadnought or not at that point in time, if you clear its limbs of the lipophage, maybe it will then like fall down and become killable, that kind of thing. Or clear a leg and it will like come down, and then you clear another leg, it will come down, and eventually you kill it. But I think that is more than what I want and more than what lipophage deserves at this point. Um, it's not an idea that was made to go that big.
No,
It,
do you? So you don't think they're actually going to go that far in season 4?
not that far,
Because you
but
said you would almost be. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you basically said that you'd be satisfied if it was mainly just focused on fleshing out the Rockpox as a faction rather than adding big new gameplay
the
thing.
Rockpox isn't a faction, in my eyes. It's just variation. It's a variation type.
Hmm.
It's like being in the ice biome, right? Ice enemies. It's just being in the lithophage biome or lithophage infected area. There will be lithophage variants of these things, um, and I think they just need to integrate it more with more enemy types. And I think there needs to be some sort of large boss variant, like whether or not that could just go as far as like Nemesis to bulk tier, where it's just like a big enemy that can spawn normally, or they go hard and make an actual mission. Because I did the poll, right, and people either want biomes or game modes, and I Lithophage biome you could
Well,
do.
the thing is
There
that
is
with that one, the
actually,
groundwork is kind of there already, isn't it? That's the thing.
yeah.
The terrain.
Honestly,
Um,
yeah, a life of phage biome would be pretty cool. It would I don't know. There is merit to a life of phage biome. It would be a very new type of biome, very new. It would be like a well, I don't know how to describe it. It would be completely different to all the other biomes because it would have its own. It would probably be where all the lithophage content is then stored to be regularly accessed,
yeah,
right?
so it's
Like
like
how industrial sabotage is right now. It will be where they shove all the lithophage content if you want to actually just
it could
play it
actually
like
work in that
constantly.
sense, couldn't it? So like you don't actually have to do that in season 4, but you have the biome in season 4, and then you can move everything in season 5 to it. You can move everything afterwards. At the same time,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it really would be something. And also, there's a narrative that you could use there, where it's like something about the Rockpox makes it feel like it's not as much here to stay as the robots, but the robots didn't necessarily give off that impression, but they are here to stay, even if their presence has been minimized. But the Rockpox is all on one meteor, that's just flying around.
Yeah.
It's not It's not on Hoxies really. And it really
the
feels like
biome
something
could always
that
be
by the
where
end
the
of
meteorite
season,
crashes as well.
exactly. Well, this is the thing. We've sort of danced with the idea of how intelligent the Rockpox is. Well, maybe if DRG does a good enough job, as in the players, I guess, do a good enough job at really just completely eliminating the infection, the Rockpox sort of hive mind just decides fuck it, and they just
Hail Mary,
redirect
and
the
then-
meteorite into the planet,
Yeah,
and it all becomes
will
concentrated into one area.
Yeah, and that biome, it will be all right, because this thing about it, right, that biome will have like the most variance of any biome, right? Because it will have all the liphophage enemy variants in it, like constantly, right? It will also be very, very visually unique, but I think it kind of needs it at this point. Like it will be like meteorite colored walls most of the time, with liphophage kind of infection layered onto that most of the time. You know what I mean? Like it would be incredibly built different of a biome.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that's a bad thing.
Wouldn't it also? Would it be one hit terrain? Oh, it's not, is it? I think
the
meteorites.
dormant. No, it would be
because the Rockpox terrain, the dormant terrain's one hit. I think it's not one hit if it's alive.
I think it will have both. I think it should have meteorite as like a standard, but then it will have like Rockpox spikes everywhere, basically. Which is just like the amount. It doesn't make sense with my head right now because what the game currently is. But if they did that, that is a step in a new direction for biomes. And I think recently they have been more than happy to do those things. But
yeah, and in my opinion, that's something that's maybe. So this is on a little bit more of the seasonal comparison level, but it's something that they can give Rockpox, I think, over the rivals, or at least it's something they haven't. They sort of failed to do, in that the rivals sort of pushed sort of the envelope for missions and warnings. Yet the Rockpox is just pushing the envelope for warnings again, so it doesn't really feel like an innovation, even though it technically is.
No.
You need to give them something else, which is why it shouldn't be another mission type.
Give the Rockpox their own thing to push. Option,
I know, but it's like you need to give the Rockpox their own thing to push forward, and I feel like a biome would probably would just blow the rivals out of the water.
Knock it out of the park. Yeah, it would if there was a biome that was an integration of meteorite and Rockpox always. That would even thing is with how biomes work. That is also one of those things where if you do not like that content, just never go there, right? Like because how it is. I mean, it still hasn't really worked perfectly, but like with industrial sabotage, like they are pockets of the older content, and I think a biome would be fucking amazing. It would be so cool and interesting, and also what people want the most. People want biomes the most right now. That is the most requested content that people want added. Second only to a game mode, which is why it's not off the table. It's also going to be an easier thing to do, but it's really it would set a bad precedent that we're only ever going to get warning, but a game mode, warning, game mode, game mode, warning, game mode.
Well, no, because the thing is though, if we get a Rockpox biome, I feel like a lot of the missions can sort of it would be very difficult to sort of conceive how it would affect the missions, or if it would. It's just like there would almost be something wrong feeling about just carrying out normal missions in those biomes. As in, you'd have to do something like, you wouldn't necessarily have the lithophage outbreak warning, but you'd have to do something like there's a contagion spike in like every mission, or like just one. You'd have to do something like that, I feel like, otherwise it would just feel kind of wrong.
Yeah.
And then I'd argue that just for gameplay reasons, to really get the most out of it, just on what's the objectively best direction to go, is that you probably leave the missions themselves relatively untouched. The difference would just come from most of the enemies, or even all of the enemies, would be Rockpox. But you would change elimination though, because it's the one that makes the most sense to change. And You know?
Yeah, but that's here's it's already like really difficult to picture it, right? Like you're doing a normal mining expedition in a meteorite rockpox biome,
Yeah, it's just like, what
right?
are you
That's
doing? It's just like, huh?
yeah, like that is already something. And you would then kind of assume that every in that biome is where all of like the rockpox warning is, right? And like maybe it will like spread out to other biomes, right? Like one or two other biomes in the cycle. There'll be some rockpox warning infestation, but then there'll just be a biome that is just always that, right? Um, and I don't know. I think because once again, add more variant to the Rockpox, um, and people will just gladly play it. Right, Rockpox as an enemy fight, like enemy type, is satisfying as hell. Um, it's just, I guess, yeah, the spike that's a bit less satisfying, a bit less fun, and then the meteorite is really cool in that. Uh, but it's just I can't currently. I cannot picture this, but I do think that is one of their best courses of action from this is to accurately and genuinely make a rockpox biome, which is going to be a step up as far as biomes go right now. Like yeah, if the biome specifically had its own objective to complete, right? Like because you go to the rockpox biome, you have to do a specific objective. That will be an innovation in biome sphere. You know, like it would actually because like I think some commenters, not commenters, I don't know. I've read it around. I think even Tom said it that like biomes don't change anything. Obviously, that's not correct. We know this, but in the end, when you're in no matter what biome you're in, if you're there to get 250 morkite, it's essentially the same experience. You just mine morkite, right? But say this one, you go to the Rockpox biome, you got morkite to mine, but you've also got fucking a spike to do, um, and that is innovation and cool and fun and all that. But they would need to bring it back. And this is a thing that I've been talking about. They would then need to go back and add something like that for all the other biomes, which is something I'm up for personally. Um, if all biomes had a biome specific objective, which doesn't have to inherently be a primary or even secondary, it could just be something to do there that's biome specific. But I think I'm losing track. Point is, I was wondering if you were even here at that
Well,
point.
no, I am. No, I'm just thinking about things you're saying. And it's like, yeah, I mean, the basic thing that the Rockpox needs to be better than the rivals is just the variety, because it will be just an objectively better faction if they have all
Yeah,
that variety, because they're just so much more fun to fight.
so much
They
more
won't
fun to
be
fight. Yeah,
eventually, I think, because they're
yeah, they're
so
already pretty
monotonous.
stale. Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
but at the same time, there's also an argument that when it comes to on a more conceptual content level, that they also need to, and at the moment they just don't, but they need to come to represent some kind of real innovation. I think uh,
yeah,
the new warning just kind of isn't.
it feels like a unnecessary step forward, in my opinion. Um,
I
but
wouldn't call it a step
it's a
back
step
though.
forward they took anyway. No, yeah, it feels like this is either going to be the new norm for warnings, which I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, or they're going to backtrack and this will be like a one-time thing, right? Because it can only really be one or the other, unless they intend on maybe like every other kind of
I would
warning they decide
genuinely
to do.
argue that it would have made more sense if it was an anomaly.
Yeah, no, I think anomaly would have worked considering yeah, it's an anomaly. It's we don't know what the fuck's
It's also
going on here.
yellow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'll say this again. Should have just been its own new thing. It's them innovating while not realizing that they need to also escape the original bounds of the game. Right? It's the same thing with the cosmetics. They continue to innovate, experiment, add new things, change things up, and it's really good. But they don't like changing the way they present it.
It
Right?
also, I should point out, there's definitely we should definitely consider that it feels like things aren't changing as much because of how long it takes. You know?
Maybe, but I think it's also it might come down to the fact that they don't want to do an overhaul slash rework due to it being out. The game's out now. It's it's a 1.0, right? It can't then add a new type of thing where it's like warning anomalies and extra assignment. That's the third category that this life worth age warning would come under, right? It doesn't, it wouldn't fit in with that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Um,
I don't know. Does that really make sense? Surely the point of seasons is to just bring new mechanics and stuff
yeah,
into the
but not
game.
new. Yeah, but not that kind of stuff. That's not stuff that gets added after like that kind of stuff. Live service doesn't add that kind of stuff um, normally. Like I don't know.
Hold on.
It's
Okay. Sorry,
because
brief interruption there.
yeah,
Oh.
because literally like warnings I don't think should have ever crossed into primary objectives. I think they should have just added, and they can still rework this. They just have to rename it so it's not a warning anymore into like a I don't know, like a important priority or some other flash word third category. Because then also it would have the cool effect
Priority
of you could
task.
have priority task. I think that
Easy.
yeah,
Yeah.
priority task. That is a third thing, and it will also have the fun effect of being able to do double warning while also having a
Oh my
priority task
good
and your
lord.
normal assignment, and that will be another step up for the people that want that kind of stuff. Um, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and it will just make it easier then because obviously now if they ever make a warning that's less than this, it's going to be a lesser warning. And fuck that. I don't want warnings like this. These are warnings are too big and grand.
Yeah.
Just
Like
add simple warnings.
a new like
Um,
category of thing, a new category of
yeah,
mutator. It's like priority task. It's like a green diamond or
yeah,
something, and it's like you can see that, and it's like at the top of the mission icon because the warning's always to the on the right side. The
yeah,
enemy's always on the left. You got the priority task at the top because it overrides basically overrides the mission objective, and it's like this
yeah.
entirely
Is
new
that there's
thing.
something else there that's more important, or equally important?
And that also would
Um,
represent like a new sort of formatting that would actually feel like appropriate for seasonal content, right? Instead of just
yeah,
continuing to
because
implement seasonal content into the same category, introduce its own thing. If you have to, if
yeah,
they're not going to do, if they're just going to keep doing
yeah,
warnings, you could do with it being in a different category, like
yeah,
if its own
because
thing.
it just feels so much better for I think everyone, right? Like, because then picture that, right? Now you have a bunch of warnings, and obviously, I'm in this scenario, they reworked Life of Age Infestation into this new category, right? So they have all the warnings up until Rival Presence. Because that never really reached that far. Rival Presence should be like the peak of warnings, the peak of warning innovation, right? Where they will add some things in the game, but you don't have to do it. It's like that kind of thing, right? It'll affect how you play the mission. Then you got like a bunch of anomalies, and then you'll have these new priority task warnings or anomalies, rather priority task anomalies that will be like super empty, right? So they can just keep filling them, and that will be a fun thing, right? Like that category of things. Obviously, I don't know, like that. Preferably, they would have more than just that every single time, but it's still that would be a whole new thing, and I think that would just result in a much cleaner experience for everyone as well. And obviously, as mentioned, an extra layer for the people that need it, an extra layer of
It can also
difficulty.
be very. It could be very malleable. I don't know. I guess maybe calling it priority task makes it a bit less malleable. That means like, oh, every season we need to come up with something that is like you have to do. But
Yeah,
I
but you
guess
don't
I
even need
guess
to do it
they.
like every season.
Mm,
But
mm.
I think it comes down to the fact that it feels like I don't know, the game is not malleable enough yet. They're constantly innovating, but they're doing so within the old um like segments, like like well, yeah, mainly in the warnings and all that stuff. They're innovating, and game modes they're innovating. Not that they've done it in a while, but yeah. Uh, and then obviously cosmetics, they're constantly innovating. Like headgears can now remove literally basically every single thing on your face down to almost nothing, and like masks and all that stuff. There's all these new categories, and they're trying to fit it in this old dated categories. And it's the same with the warnings and that. They need to update their categories
Systems.
to match, systems categories to match the new innovations they made to the game. Otherwise, it just feels weird, right? They're innovating all this much, but in the end, it will be equal to the old
Instead,
stuff that is nowhere
they're
close.
just forcing content into current systems where it doesn't fit.
Yeah,
Which I think Live and Fade Outbreak is actually
it's
the
only
biggest
going to make
example
everything
of that.
worse. It's going to make the old content look worse in comparison, and it's going to make the new content worse because it's being tied down by the other stuff. Like it is worse for everything to just stand by these dated organization systems, especially when, in the end of the day, it's basically meaningless, right? Like, obviously, if this third mutator occurred, that would actually be really impactful to the game, which I think is another reason why it should be done. It would really change a lot of mission formats, right? Like, if there
Yeah,
actually is, they do add like actual multiple priority task missions, right? That would
it would have
severely,
also it would have made it feel so fresh as well, because that would have completely differentiated this from season 2.
yeah, yeah. If
Because
this
it's
was,
already got
if
the
they,
big difference of being adding a primary objective, but it's just been within like the framing of it just being mutated. It's like, but if they named it something else, which it deserved to be,
yeah.
it earned the right to be in a different category, but it just
Yeah,
wasn't.
because it's far above and beyond all the other warnings. It's literally it's just a slightly less content mission, right? And it exactly
But
it's my point that
we
like
sort of
it
made
makes
to view it like a warning because
yeah.
it's
The thing
called a
is,
warning because it's
it is exactly as I said earlier that it being classified as a warning has made other warnings look bad and this be worse because it's a
yeah.
warning, right? Except if they had introduced it as a third new type, boom shaka and the lacquer,
That's
right?
also that just looks good.
Yeah, because like it would immediately, right, yeah, it would escape the confines of warnings, and warnings would still be its own thing. It then also means you would actually be able to do these with warnings on it, because I'm not sure if I haven't seen any double warning with life. Actually, no, I have seen some with life of phage,
Really,
but
I
it's
haven't seen
rare.
those.
Uh,
Yeah, and what would be
but like,
what would be really interesting though in those elite threat,
yeah, elite life of age enemies, or like I don't know, fucking I don't know, but maybe stuff like
parasites.
Mactera and life of age, because then you would actually get Macteras in your life of age swarms or some shit like that.
Put
Like I
Mactera
don't
in
know,
your
but
life
still,
of page
like
form.
if
Vital
if the
presence.
life of age plus if it was in its own category on launch, right, first of all we wouldn't be able to say warning, what the hell, we would be like, oh my god, there's a new
Something
category,
completely new.
the
Like
opportunities are
completely new.
endless.
Like
Like suddenly the horizon has swung open the door where like a thing that I the only thing I do like about deep dives is that you have two primary objectives will then be completely open, where
so.
all of your experiences in the game will be completely renewed with another objective, which is already the case, but it's being limited by the title of warning, and
So
it's
this
just
sort of
so
leads. This
frustrating.
comes back to the cosmetic thing, sort of like an overall sort of
Relabeling.
Well, no,
That's
it's an overall
all it would
thing
be.
because something like this I think happened last podcast maybe where we sort of, or it was actually on a stream. I think it might actually been on the rival the rival like farewell stream,
Yeah.
where we sort of had an epiphany about one of the true problems with seasons, and I feel like we've almost got there like here before, but I feel like we might have just cracked another code, um, which is they're making more exceptions than innovations, right? You know what I mean? And that's why like
Yeah.
rival presence wasn't really an exception. That was actually, but then it's arguably not enough content for like the main seasonal content. It was just a bit more it put into a warning, but it was still didn't really go beyond what a warning should be. Then like industrial sabotage was definitely an exception of a mission. It was definitely treated that way. And the lithophage outbreak is an exception of a mutator. And there's so many exceptions when it comes to like the cosmetics and stuff as well now. And all of these things, it comes together. It's just like maybe we need to create more systems for these things to be put into, rather than just making exceptions for them. Might do you better for the future. You know?
Yeah, it's. I feel like this is the kind of thing that we need to actually like make a video on, because this needs to kind of get out there. Because I think
so you mean we really do need to do a video that is not a podcast, and it's like the problem with seasons.
Yeah, something like that, or it's like life with age infestation should not have been a warning.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
So something clickbait as fuck. And
I would say we don't do clickbait enough. I think.
Yeah, and clickbait as fuck.
We could do
where we get our point across to as many people as we can, because, in all fairness, right? First of all, Ghost Ship already kind of hears us anyway, right? Like, there is a chance that we are being listened to by someone at Ghost Ship right now.
My hope isn't that we're like my hope I guess that is my hope, that we sort of can change their minds, but it's not really that. My main, not even expectation, I guess the most reasonable thing I can say is I kind of hope that maybe we just say something that they like the sound of. Not like, we're not here to tell you what to do. Don't think of us as telling you what to do. Just, if anyone that is listening, if you hear something you think that's a good idea, try and do something with it.
Obviously, we don't think we're wrong, but like I don't see how
it doesn't mean we're right. Though. It doesn't mean.
Yeah, I don't. Look, everything we've just said obviously is the case. I think if they expanded all these things, there would only be positive results. But they know more than we do. Right? They would be able to hear what we just said, and they'll be like, "Yeah, the technical limitations on that ain't happening." Or, "Yeah, we played around with that idea, but it just really didn't play out well," or something like that. They know more than we do, which is why we're just people speculating on the internet, and they work there, right? But we can still make these points. And if it turns out that they didn't think about it right, and that they didn't think about how if it was its third category, it would be just infinitely better than it is currently, right? Even it literally exactly what it is now, rename it, repackage it as a third warning type or a third anomaly type, not fucking hell, a third mutator.
Nice.
Yeah, a third mutator. Repackage it as that. Job done. Honestly, this season will immediately become equal to like the others, because as of right now, I guess it's equal to part 2, really, or season 2.
In terms of like content, that content it is, but then you look at the other stuff and
it doesn't match season 1 in any regard, not a single regard.
I do love those.
Other than maybe
we were so
quality.
I think cosmetic quality is possibly higher than season 1.
And I forgot about the secondaries, actually. I think it's worse than season 2, actually.
In a lot of ways it is, but I do actually think the cosmetic quality might be highest.
The best so far. Yeah, no. I think the amount of hair they added is really well due.
It's actually because there's actually they've added a lot of really nice hairstyles, and they've added a lot of hairstyles that have armor paint job things in them as well.
Yeah.
And also just a lot of
I think
pretty
that's
nice
the
helmets
thing as well.
And nice paint jobs.
They need a lot of attention to be paid against cosmetics, considering it is arguably one of the most important parts of the game, right? And I think they just need some simple things, like obviously the recategorizing of things that are more or less than a headgear, right? Like masks as its own thing, where it will cover your entire face and nothing you choose makes a difference. That should be its own category. Stuff like that. But there should also just
the biggest one for me is the eyewear thing, to be honest.
Yeah, eyewear, definitely.
Separating eyewear from headwear.
Because that would be taking some pieces apart, but it would definitely pay off. But literally, minimum they could do is add a visual representation on the cosmetic, like a little icon in the top right, that says whether or not your skin would change the color, right?
But I'm going to make you really upset now with something that just obviously isn't possible at the moment. You know the goggled head wrap?
Yeah.
Where it's like a turban and like
No,
bandana
I don't know exactly what
that
you mean.
uses
Yeah.
your paint job. Well, first of all, that bottom half as a beard would be fantastic, right? Just the bottom
Oh yeah,
bandana, but the bottom
immediately. Yeah.
half with the bandana and the goggles, and then you could have a different hairstyle on top. Just like
Yeah. No, it's
need.
it's so much
I'm actually
potential.
really surprised that beard doesn't exist. Actually, they didn't do that. They could have put it
Well,
in the shop. They
it's
could.
because they don't do that, right? Do they? Because they could do the same thing with the other things. All the things where there's a top half and then there's a like full thing, they could just add the bottom half because of masks, right? They could
Well,
just do that, right?
well, that came to
Um,
mind because I think it probably is the one that makes the most sense. But let's
yeah, I mean,
see.
bottom of Grim Spectre would be a bit weird, but
Yeah, you know what? Robot Rebellion. I wouldn't mind that bottom half. It'd be pretty funny.
exactly. Like, and they could just tap it onto the DLC, right? Because they do that anyway, don't they? They add more stuff to the DLC as they release the new guns. So
Yeah.
they can add new things to the DLC. So they could add a bottom jaw to the DLC packs, and it's just stuff like that. It's and that kind of obviously we have gotten sizably off track, but it's this kind of level of stuff where they are so looking. Well, they're not even looking into the future. They're not looking that far ahead. They're just looking at how to
They're just trying to
one up
figure
what they've
out what
got
they can
currently.
do.
Yeah, they're just always trying to think about how they one up what they currently have, and then they do that, and then they one up it again, and then they
Mm.
do that, and they one up it again. So they don't look forward into the future and see where they're going with it. So it kind of feels like it's pointless, and they don't look backwards, and they don't realize how many things they've left without one ups. And
Yeah.
it results it results in the game kind of feeling hollow in anywhere that they haven't recently touched. Um, and that leaves a lot of parts of the game because they're not touching a lot of it because they're spending too much
Can I
time
just
on needless
is
warnings.
there anyone listening to this that is like just default to, oh, these guys clearly just hate Deep Rock. What's wrong with them? Like,
Surely,
well, these aren't the things that people who dislike games say. You know,
yeah,
this isn't what
because you'll notice
happens.
how we haven't critiqued the gameplay or like any of that, right? Because we do not in any universe think there is anything wrong with a vast majority of the gameplay. Obviously, we did a little bit on the robots, but that was more just facts, right? We talked about how the, they did kind of decrease the reward for shooting like the robots, but like yeah,
Mm.
generally if anything, we're so happy with the game that we're going out of our way to find issues.
I wouldn't
But it's
say
only
out of our
because
way. Uh,
mm,
mm, maybe actually,
well,
maybe.
the thing is, because yeah, for your average player, these are not issues that they're in any way concerned with. Because let's be honest, the actual dwarven cosmetics still one of the best like customization stuff in any game, right? It's still really good. It's just there is so much more potential there. And once again, this whole warning thing, not that I mean people aren't entirely fond of it, but it's still like it's an interesting step up, and people still like it and that. But it could be better. At least we think it can be by simply renaming it. As simple as recoloring it, renaming it,
But
repositioning it. Job
but
done.
they're not going to do that now. That's the
No,
thing. They should have done
no,
that
they
from the
no,
beginning
but
of
they
season three.
should. That's the
I
thing.
know.
They're
It's
not
just,
gonna.
but I don't. Yeah, they would be. They just wouldn't do something like that. But they should.
Because they think they're that I don't want to say this, but they think they're better than that, but they're not, right? Like they are a small team and a very dedicated fan base. If they renamed, if they wanted to rename it, nobody would judge. No, like nobody would be like, why would they do that? Well, that's so silly. News things would be like, what are these incompetent developers doing? Everyone would admit that, yep, that was a good thing. I'm so glad they did that. Thank you, Ghost Ship. Right? It's the times they show their humanity that they do their best acts. And I
I always
think,
viewed them as quite sort of like, sort of scrappy and sort of like unprofessional, but in a good way. And
yeah, because they're not afraid to defy what companies would or
which,
wouldn't do for
that's what
their
Small
fans.
Meteor is. That's what.
Yeah, small meteor. Like they're still in there, right? Which is why I'm even bothering to voice my opinion like this, right? Because that's another thing, right? If people are like, oh, why we play so much, like I don't give a fuck to most other games. Like a AAA thing like Overwatch, right? There are so many issues with it. I don't care. I don't complain about it. It's dumb as hell. Nothing's going to get changed. But I legitimately have faith in this development team that they, whether or not they listen to me, that they will hear me, understand my point of view, and that at least that. And like,
Understand that priority tasks is an objectively good idea for me.
yeah,
It just, I really don't see how that isn't a really good idea.
because especially since that is exactly what they have right now, right? There's literally, that is the category they have just discovered. They just haven't thought about
Yeah, and then you
renaming
go
it.
to the miner's manual and you see Lithophage outbreak as its own mission, but it's also in the warnings like section.
Yeah,
Like, oh, it's got
it's
2 entries. Yeah, but it could just have one in the priority task section.
yeah, it's just, come on, Ghost Ship, just realize that you are limiting yourself. Like, unfathomable potential at the tip of your fingers, and it's just pissing me off at this point. Um, and if not, if you hear this, just tell us why. Just spend like a
Send us a
10
DM. We won't
seconds,
tell anyone.
scroll down to the comment, and just say, yeah, no, we can't do that because of technical reasons, or we don't like want to redo the fucking customization for dwarves because it might break some people's looks, or some shit bull ass shit reason like that, right? Just because, as far as I'm concerned, and I think Harry, you agree with it, there is nothing but positives to at least the third mutator idea, and obviously
Yeah, and well,
the
see, the thing is,
customization stuff.
I would be interested to have that idea shot down. I would like to know if we're misguided, because I struggle
Yeah,
so
like,
much to see how it could be bad. Because like I mentioned about how it's represented in the miners manual, Lithophage outbreak is has its own entry in the mission section
yeah,
and in the
even
warning
they're
section.
struggling to place it,
Yeah, yeah, it's
within their limited things.
they're struggling to place it because they didn't give it its own place.
Yeah, like, they didn't want to make it a game mode, right? Clearly, they didn't want to do that because they easily could have, right? So they made it into a warning, I guess, because they thought that was their only option. Their only option, if it's not game mode, is a warning. Um,
Well, it's the only option that the
in
game presents, but
Exactly, but they are developers. They
exactly,
they they
you're the
craft the
makers.
systems. Yeah, you can easily just boom, or not easily boom, but you
And
can easily decide boom, we're adding a new thing,
well, Tyler,
and
the
then
only
just,
argument against it is that it would be category lacking in depth, but
yeah,
that's
exactly.
because it's
But the
starting out. That's
potential
fine.
of the depth, yeah,
Yeah,
like,
okay to start
it's,
somewhere. It's like the rivals, no, not the rivals. Sorry, the Rockpox is a category of
yeah,
enemies
there's
that
three
lacks
of them
depth.
now, but we you got potential, and I think that could have been something, right? If this warning was the third type, this season would have screamed potential, right? Like, we are working towards a new era of deep rock, right? But as it sits currently, it feels like they are being restricted by themselves. They can't make as many enemy
Mm.
types as they seem to want to. They're making grenades that nobody really wanted or cares about. They're adding warnings that nobody wanted. It
Don't
just
diss
feels like
grenades.
they're. I'm just saying, it's,
What?
nobody wanted grenades.
Oh, nobody wanted grenades. Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. It was not. It was definitely not at the top of most people's list.
Yeah.
Um, and only one of them really. Well, actually, they didn't. The thing is with the grenades, it's weird because it's not like they all have to come out on top. But at the
I
same
know.
time,
It
maybe
they
no, they
had
kind of
to
did.
actually. Thing is, though, they didn't do anything either, though. I don't. I would see, probably it's probably getting to the point where eventually we could do a grenade poll, see how the charts equaling out without the recency bias. But I don't think that the Ripper is really fucked with the axes,
Well, I mean, I
or
have thoughts about
the
that.
grenades have fucked with the cryo grenade. Um, and if anything, I think the new grades might have broken other people, because I feel like Shredders are probably taken over
The
engineer,
shredders have. Well,
and
yeah, that's
I don't think any
something.
shades are gonna. But
No,
yeah, so I think the point is that it just feels like since they changed over to seasons, they've forgotten how to make the game. Because it's taken them longer. They're adding things that people don't really want. It just feels weird. It's like I don't know.
Let's not fall back into this again, right?
It's far too late, but
Well, it's not because it is. It's like no, well, I thought we have somehow managed to make new points on the same subject. We're retreading the same ground, but in different shoes. No, not in different. No, sorry, we're treading new ground in different shoes. No, new ground in the same shoes. Because this was born out of that priority task idea. But shit, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So I just find it funny that we were so confident that when season 3 came out, we were going to be like really sure about the future, and we could be, but we don't want it to be.
It's getting to the point where like, how many seasons is it going to take for us to know what we should expect for the future of the game?
Well, to be honest, if we want to draw conclusions about that from this season, the conclusion would be when it's never going to really be set in stone. That's the truth of it, which is honestly not the worst. I'd rather it be unpredictable than predictably this.
But so far the only thing we can predict is this. All we can predict is middling content, like with high effort put into every single bit of it, and high like quality control and all of that. Just not direction. The game
this is actually season 3
directionless.
more than season 2 or 1, and the reason is, and okay, yeah, we're going back. Let's do this again. I am very, very confident that weapons are far more valuable content than most other things, basically.
Yeah. No, honestly, yeah.
That type of content is so much more valuable and gives so much more life to the game than I think whatever season 3 added does. That's just a fact. Season 2 actually did a lot because of how good those weapons are, and just the fact that there were new weapons. That means so much more to play around with.
Yeah.
And
because it really didn't add that much other than the weapons. Season 2. Think about it: Nemesis and the actual turret controller. Like, obviously not the turret, just the controller and the Nemesis.
That's an event.
Yes, communication router actually as well. But that was also still a mechanic they already had. They just reworked, which is another thing, right? It's not entirely relevant, but it's like if they do a part 2, that would be better. Better to do a part 2 because they now have all the mechanics, right? They have. It's going to be the same as season 2. They can just pump out a bunch of shit now that they have Rockpox, everything, all that code done, right? Which is why season 2 or season 4 should be a part 2, because then we'll get more, because it'll be easier to make more. That's something worth knowing, right?
You know what? They probably don't want to make new weapons, though. And there's another. Well, I mean, I know they don't yet, at least. As in, they don't want to at the moment.
They stated that.
But what I'm getting at. What?
You go.
Frameworks.
Well, they say that.
Fucking hell, you said you go.
Yeah, I know. And then you didn't.
What I was getting at was actually frameworks and cosmetics now for the weapons. Like, obviously, like I said, they don't want to make new weapons at the moment, like as in. But I feel like when it comes to the point where they might, it's like, oh, but that would be even more frameworks again. We've got to make all the frameworks that pre-exist for them again. It's like all of that stuff. And it's just like, well, actually, I like unlocking those frameworks.
Class, though.
I like going into a mission and finding a cargo crate and then getting a new framework. That's more likely to keep me playing than a lot of other things.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. The future of this game just seems so foggy, just so foggy. Like,
you know what? They need to alternate between seasons that add gameplay and seasons that add equipment. I think there's something there. I think where you can just go hard in either one of those things each season. and not have to
I
half-ass
may
either of them ever.
maybe, but maybe they
But
should
then you wouldn't,
only ever.
Tyler, because also it
Maybe
would
that
reduce the chance of those things getting bloated as well as quickly.
no, but maybe they should only the seasons should only be the gameplay stuff. They should just add equipment whenever they can, and then
Yeah,
this. But that is something that is not that's not occurring.
no,
But and
no.
I don't really think it's going to solve the issue because I don't think they're delaying adding the equipment to the gameplay. I don't think the gameplay is getting delayed for the equipment. It feels like everything's probably getting made at about the same time. It's just, and I say this again, but only quickly because I really do think they should just fucking do this. Set a date, set a fucking date. Um,
Yeah.
but just set a date, do stuff for that date, release it on that date. Don't pussyfoot around and be like, oh, we can do all this because we have an infinite fucking time, or we can do this because we have an infinite fucking time. Oh, it's still not an infinite. They're like, oh, okay, they're probably aim for like
Infinite.
4 months, but they got like at least six, right? And that will inherently I don't know. They just feel like they don't want to close any doors, like so they can do whatever they want. But that is resulting in just having far too many doors open, and it's being incredibly just squiffed. Just I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know that the game right now is annoying me, um, and that's not pleasant.
Mm,
But
yeah.
there isn't there's not that many issues though as well. That's the
No,
thing. It's
it's
just
weird, isn't it? It's like the game isn't actually getting worse.
no, not at all.
No.
It just feels like yeah, like currently the only thing we need to do, and I would say need to do in that I'm an ego, a giant ego, and that they have to do what I say because it's the best thing to do. But if they turned the fucking Life of Phage infestation into a third mutator, that would do it. That would actually just make the game good. Like just the future would seem bright with that addition
I would
because
come so much it would
then
be like coming out my shoes.
because at that point in time you would comfortably say that we're going to be looking at a like let's go for I don't know, priority task like every season if not every other one like we're going to getting a lot of them because they need to fill up that category and I think as long as the quality of those are good I think people will be fine with that right obviously preferably biome we need a biome next that is a thing
Or
but
anomaly,
yeah.
right? Or do you not agree? Or do you think
Mm,
that's not?
Anomaly was nowhere close to the top of
I
the
know it's
list.
not
It
close,
was, well, it's
but
actually that's a lie. It was third,
no,
but
but I think they could do
um,
something interesting there in that it's not necessarily at the top of people's list, but they could make it stand out still.
sure. But like, why risk it? Just add what people want in the way that you want it, right? I'm sure they want to add a biome. I'm sure they'd love to make a biome. They have the
Hmm.
caustic mire if they feel like adding
Yeah,
that.
because the thing is,
Like,
I was about to say, it's actually, it's generally quite difficult to just do what people want, but it's not really.
people don't people like flesh pit. We need flesh pit. The only thing we'll accept is flesh pit. They just want a biome. They just want a new
No,
place
that's
to
just a
be.
popular idea, but people
Yeah,
want a biome. That's undeniable.
yeah.
It's not
People
hard to
just
figure
want
out
to
what the.
be
It's
somewhere new
really,
and
it
have a
really is
different
clear what
aesthetic.
people want on a broad level. Right now,
Yeah,
it is biomes and overclocks and perks
biomes
mixed in a little bit.
and
It's a bit mixed between perks
biomes
and
overclocks
overclocks.
perks
Yeah,
because perks and overclocks have had. Well, I would argue that. Well, I don't know. Obviously, perks have gotten a lot more attention since the new weapons have new perks. But
you mean overclocks?
I don't know. Yeah, that's the one. Um, but
You know
yeah,
what?
I
Yeah,
think
let's give the weapons perks.
perks
Actually,
is
it's a good idea. It's a
yeah
good.
perks are definitely due. Overclocked will be welcomed, but overclocks will be
Tyler,
added
I think
and then
overclocks will be
followed
due
immediately.
after,
No,
in my opinion.
overclocks will be added, and then people are like, "Where's the perks?" Like, right? And like they'll be like, and then they'll make add more overclocks. So where's the perks? But like, but if they just add perks, then they'll be like, okay, from now on overclocks, right? Like it'll be like once perks are done, overclocks is it. From now on, we'll just be expecting overclocks, and that's fine. Everyone will be happy with that. But if they get perks out of the way, job done. They can move on with just overclocks or maybe new sets of guns in a year or two, that kind of thing. Just get perks out of the way, overclocks from then on. I think that is a lot easier of a thing to do, right? Like,
Pardon me.
because
Ooh.
even they've acknowledged the need for perks, like an actual need for perks, like.
Yeah. Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. I think this is point is uh Rockpox enemies versus rivals.
What is that? What are you
I
talking
think
about? What are you?
I think I think the Rockpox has a lot more potential, but it doesn't. We can't really know if they're going to live up to that. So right now, robots win mid to low diff.
Ooh. Okay. There you go. Oh, I think it's. You hear that? You can't hear that. I don't know. Cracking my fingers. I think the mic picks it up, but you can't. It doesn't come from Discord though. Small meteors are weird though, right? Because we finally got those. We finally had small
We did.
meteors. Yeah. We had one, which
We got
means
5 meteors and we got 1 heart, which was
so.
nice.
This is the funny thing about that because I had another one later. There was 7 meteors. There was 7. There was still only 1 play cart. So I don't know what the ratio is. I don't know if you can actually get. Like, I don't know if there's a chance that you can get a play cart in every meteor. I feel like there must be a chance that can happen. It'd be tiny, but I feel like the number of play carts you can get must go up to the number of meteors you can get. And that's fine because that one they also added voice lines for it too, separate voice lines. Like that's a whole ass. Which to be honest,
Yeah.
if that was like on launch of season 3, that would have been a little bit different. But also there was something
Honestly,
about
I
it
think
coming along later that really
yeah,
that was good. There was something about that was good because it would have probably looked a little bit lazy if like this is the second event because they don't have to do 2
yeah.
events. And that's why it's fine that it's
But
not
then
as important.
it's
Like,
it's another one of those things. Like
well,
in every regard, the small meteor is literally everything I want from them. It is just a gameplay addition that is a gameplay edition, yet is fucking zero effort, right? Other than obviously the immense amount of effort, right? Like it is like minimal effort, maximum reward, right? It is just as fun to get small meteor as it is any other event in the fucking
I
game.
wouldn't call it maximum reward when I get 1 play card out of 7 meteors.
I know, yeah, but still, it is like boom, that's all it took, right? And it could not have taken them more than 2, maybe 3 weeks, right? If that,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Like, so what took them 6 months? Well, no, obviously, right. Obviously, they had to make the code for a falling meteor, so that probably saved them a lot of time. But
Mm.
and I think they already had small meteor from when there was a small meteor.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
they probably just had to add the cracking animation, and obviously that stuff. But I don't know, and the voice lines for the fella. But like, it just I don't understand. Then what takes so long? Like, should we be expecting like a very short season this time because they have all the coding there, or is it going to take just as long again for some reason somehow?
It shouldn't take well. Obviously it should not take any longer than it took from season 1 to 2, right? Surely
Yeah,
it should be about the same, probably. Ideally less, but obviously it won't be.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna be. I'm probably more interested than ever actually to see what's coming next. Actually, because I wasn't particularly excited when I found out that we were getting new grenades. That was like the original season 3 roadmap, right?
yeah. And
So
we spent more time talking about how many we thought there was going to be than whether or not we wanted it. Like,
yeah,
and
but
obviously, yeah, we got let down pretty hard in that regard.
yeah, but I'm just I don't know. The intrigue doesn't go away though. I'm always interested to
No.
know like that I will covet the next roadmap with all my lust.
Yeah, no,
Also,
you're waiting for me on that one though.
what?
That's not a news video you're gonna do alone.
Obviously. Wait, did I?
Yeah. No, you didn't, but you've been doing them recently. But then again, it's pretty fair enough, to be honest. A news video covering Smaller Meteor and the awards didn't really need both of us there.
Hold on, I was just
But
looking at that, wasn't I?
a
The
roadmap
roadmap
would have.
for. Oh, it's right here. The season 2 roadmap, which we got December 1st. Wait, that's today.
Whoa! What?
No. Okay, so what I'm saying is the roadmap that told us what was going to be in season 2, we got this time last year, which was about.
And did they released? Didn't they release the season at like the same bloody time as well last year, like season 1?
Yeah,
So we actually should be looking at a roadmap
they also didn't stream today.
any day now. Oh. I was not expecting that.
I see. I was thinking, okay, well, yeah, we'll get it in like February because I was thinking because I think that's when season 2 got revealed, because of the anniversary stream. But obviously, I didn't realize we got the. I was expecting to see like January at least, like late January on that date for the roadmap, and I was like December 1st, but that's today.
Yeah.
Like what? Okay, so I guess
Well,
we're probably really close to the next roadmap.
Hasn't it been like over a month already for like normal people?
It's been about
on
it's been
PC?
about a month. It'll be on the 3rd of December. It'll be a month since season 3 launched. So,
Right.
oh no, when was season 1 launch? The date was it the 7th of November? Oh Jesus Christ, Tyler! I just accidentally used the thing on the right, like the scroll bar. I accidentally scrolled down to March 2017.
How'd you manage that?
Why is there a picture of the Thunderhead in 2017?
Is that not when it was added?
No,
Then who knows?
that's not actually what the game looked like at that point. That's just a generic picture that got placed on everything. Because, for example, all the hot fixes, you got the update 4 hotfix, but it's got the Plague Fall thumbnail.
Right.
Either way, I need to find the season 1 release date. I should know it, but I should have it memorized by now, but not.
If you never decide to memorize it, that shit don't get memorized.
I think it's the 7th though, or the 9th.
No, I don't remember.
It actually was. Huh.
Oh,
it was November 4th. So actually, they're behind.
So technically,
oh god, I just accidentally opened McAfee. Just.
So we actually could expect a roadmap
right now,
but I don't feel like it.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel like it, does it? But
No,
at the same time, there's no reason to think that it wouldn't come soon,
unless they take longer now and expect to take longer.
Well, okay. To be fair, though, right? To be fair, I'm going to go back to. I think it was actually. Yeah, it was the meteor showers thing. I think, right? Nope. No, it must have been the Steam Awards host. We're not quite ready to talk about what the far future brings for DRG. We will soon reveal the next seasonal event. Okay, that was Christmas. That post was November 22nd.
Right. So, when is that Steam Awards thing occurring?
Oh, good point.
Because if I was a developer, that would be a pretty nice reward. Not only other than whatever headgear we're getting.
I don't. It doesn't have the date there.
Right. I mean, it's probably near the end of this year, right? Considering that's what it's for in it of the year. So we probably should expect the roadmap this month, at least.
Oh, yeah, I think we could. Yeah, that's the thing. Because I'm sorry, well, just based on what I just saw, we could get it really, really soon, which I just didn't expect. I didn't even think about it, but I guess we can expect that soon now. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get
Although,
news on the
There's
Christmas event
mentioning
next
that the
week.
only thing we really learn from that is the equipment content. That's
Yeah,
like it.
that's
So
going to
it'll be
be
either like perks
important
or
though.
overclocks,
Well, yeah, I
which
know, but
will be good.
well, Tyler, that's the thing though. If it's not, see, okay, I'm not. To be fair, I'm not expecting it to not be one of those things, right? Because
Yeah.
grenades was sort of. I feel like they needed to. I don't think there was actually that much demand at the time when they drew up those plans, you know, because we just gotten
Yeah.
the new like Gen 3 of weapons, right? So I feel like everyone was just so
People were
focused
still
on them.
gnawing on that.
Yeah, everyone's so which means, and it's going to sound really rude because it is, that make Ghost Ship were just twiddling their thumbs trying to figure out what they should add next instead of having the community to go off. But because grenades wasn't really what anyone wanted next, that means what the things the things that people do want next comes out, and it has come out since. So it will be one of those things. I think it's very, very safe to say. Unless, of course, we don't get something in that category. There's just too many what ifs, but at the same time, it feels very certain. It feels certain at the same time. We just need to see, which means we need to
won't
wait.
be long, which is
interesting. It shouldn't be long. If it is long, then.
But doesn't bode well.
Well, no. I'm just saying if it does take a while, right? If we don't get something by the end of the year, it's just like, I think something's going on here. I think something's going. You know, it's like.
Well, I think, now more than ever would be a really good time to reassess seasonal models if they actually meant it by that it was an experiment. If they genuinely meant that it was an experiment, now would be a very good time.
When did you hold on? Did they say that?
Well, they said that they weren't 100% committed to it.
Oh God, I just got to go to the fucking season 1 Q&A again. the FAQ that they did. Need a Deep Galactic website. It's spelling Deep Galactic wrong. I keep writing Deep Galactic. There it is. This doesn't seem to be answering anything.
Alright.
Which means...
Well, we can probably be racking up. Racking up those skills.
Racking up. See, I was going to have like a discussion about all the different weapons and their viability against the robots and Rockpox, but which would have been appropriate. We probably should have had that discussion instead of
maybe
what we just did.
Lost. Yeah.
We got lost in the heat of passion.
I wish we could have like a positive podcast for which says a lot considering I'm pretty sure I'm the one that steers it down that path more than the two of us.
Well, no, it's the two of us.
Just the two of us.
No, I mean, it's not me.
We can make it if we try.
But
it's just we ping pong off each other and then we end up in a dark place.
I think it was the last podcast. I think we were actually quite positive though, and it was also quite short. It was an hour and a half.
Right, that was us.
That was just to follow up.
Like, yeah,
season 3 stuff. Oh well. Whatever. What's going? This is too long for what it was going to be. But you know what? That's fine. That's absolutely fine. You know what? The more we make these points, the more we make these points, maybe it increases the chance of someone listening.
Well, every time we make these points, you end up discovering something new.
It's worked. Exactly. We're innovating.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why we should make it a new category. If we innovate so far beyond the original purpose of the goal, because what even is a warning, right? It's warning
God.
you that there's something extra in there, I guess, and that it's a bit more dangerous. Which I guess, by definition, it's still
It's meant to
kind
be
of
like
a
a
thing.
difficulty modifier. It's not what this
It's
is.
supposed to be just, I guess, like expect more of these things, right? Like
It's an added
expect
hazard.
more exploders, expect more cave leeches,
Yeah,
expect more Mactera.
but no, it's an added hazard or obstacle, or like added.
Yeah,
It's meant to supplement the difficulty.
yeah, but this
This page
just
outbreak doesn't supplement difficulty. It just adds something to do.
yeah, which it's
It's
just
different. It's
just
different in so many ways.
I think that is definitely due an actual full on video because it's just not right. It's actually just not right that it's called a warning, and it's sad that they're doing it really because it's only made everything worse.
Mm.
Yeah,
It's lovely.
that's
It's
gonna
lovely.
be
Let's end on that. Let's end on that. It's a
yeah.
lovely note. Temple.
Well, that was really the conclusion.
Oh,
we came
sorry.
to.
Actually, maybe it's something lighter. It seems increasingly likely that those elves that we saw are real.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I saw people playing with that stuff in the cave, and there were more voice lines as well.
Oh,
Getting heard. So yeah, I guess we can look forward to that.
that is
Or just
interesting,
Christmas being
because
soon.
that means that they started adding that already.
Well, Tyler, I don't think they used the word elf in that footage though. That's the thing. I think that might be in placeholder. They called them like Yuletide pranksters. They called them, mischievous sprites.
Yeah.
That's what we can. This is actually one of the biggest reasons I really want those, elves quote to be added, so we get the mischievous sprites.
Let's get him to call them mischievous sprites. I've got a mischievous sprite.
I've caught I've caught a silly little fella. I've caught a mischievous little fellow, if you will. But yeah, we can look forward to Christmas coming soon and possibly even a roadmap today.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. But wake up one morning, jump out of bed.
I mean, waking up to that shit is pretty good. But at the same time, I don't really let that happen anymore. I need to be there when it happens.
Vigilant.
I'm ever vigilant.
You stay awake all night.
Yeah.
On the Steam post.
I mean, I guess it is notable that this is like the time that we got the roadmap last year, and they also not.
It's a pretty funky
They didn't stream
coincidence.
today. They didn't. Not that means maybe they. Oh, the Transformers: Rise of the Beasts trailer.
They're still making those.
Kind of. It's not Michael Bay anymore. You don't remember the Bumblebee one? That was like quite well received. As in, it was like, yeah, this is actually a pretty decent film. And it's sort of like a soft reboot, but I think it might be a full reboot now. And then this one is like not really a sequel, but I think they're kind of just doing what they want and just seeing if they can get Transformers off the ground again.
Yeah, because it kind of fell.
Beast Wars was a pretty popular cartoon, classic Transformers cartoon. It's like, I can't remember what they call them. But your Autobots, Decepticons, and the Beast ones.
Furries.
No, they're not furry.
Furries. That doesn't stop some furries making furry Doretta.
Predacons. Oh, I think there's two. I think there's like pretty dodgy actually. It's pretty.
All right then.
Look at this idiot.
Well, let's finish this up right now.
Maximals and Predacons.
All right. Thank you all for watching. We have been the two people that rant all the time about the game they love, and you have watched our video on it for some reason. If you enjoy all your Ghost Ship games, please comment down below and tell
I
us
like
why
how
we're
are those
right.
things mutually exclusive? They can't enjoy it if they're from Ghost Ship. They can't.
Well, I can't imagine someone from Ghost Ship Games would have enjoyed us roasting their decisions. But
Everyone at that
uh,
studio is like, "Fuck."
yeah, I don't know. I think that we're right, but of course I would because I'm one of them. Yeah, but if you agree, comment down below, and if you enjoyed, like and subscribe.
If you
I'm Ben
disagree,
Rock and Stone.
don't say anything. You just
Yeah, if you
don't want to hear it.
disagree,
I don't.
just mold
Coaxy
in
mold.
on like
My hair better, my shoes better, my house better, my car better, my work, my job better.
I disagree.
Shut up, Thomas.
All right, see you later. Have a good one.
Oh, but he's here now. All right. Right, bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening and watching and being just the best.
Mwah.